What if the hand you lift a neighbor with is the one that gets bitten before sunset? Hal Whitaker, 57, hair the color of storm cloud steel, was the kind of man who kept extra screws in his coat pocket, just in case civilization loosened overnight. At dawn on Thanksgiving, he trudged through frost to fix widowed Mrs. Delaney's sagging porch, patching every board until it stopped whining about gravity. Good deeds stack up like cordwood, he told himself. They'll warm you later. By noon, the only lumber on his mind was pie crust. He ambled home, boots muddy, heart clean, and found an urgent letter perched on the mailbox like a vulture playing dress-up. Inside, a foreclosure notice on Whitaker hardware, effective immediately, signature scribbled in ink that looked suspiciously like his own. Hal, internal funny. I don't remember forging my name on a $287,000 line of credit. Must have been sleep carpentry. He phoned the bank. The rep's voice oozed politeness while confirming, "Your wife handled the paperwork last month, sir." Cynthia, saintly Cynthia, who preached coupon redemption as a spiritual discipline. Hal's stomach performed a trapeze act without a net. He pictured the store, oak counters burnished by 30 years of handshakes, about to be gutted and auctioned like roadkill. At dinner, Cynthia ladled gravy with surgical calm. "Rough day at the shop, hon?" Her eyes never blinked. Their daughter Emily, back from Chicago, scrolled her phone, thumbs flitting like hummingbirds around secrets. Hal, internal, 2 women at this table know something. And 1 turkey isn't the only thing getting carved tonight. Before dessert, Hal excused himself, walked to the shed, and stared at his Smithsonian-grade collection of hammers. "Tools don't betray you," he muttered, gripping an old ball peen like a prayer bead. What happened next rewired every relationship Hal thought was solid. You don't want to miss how quickly kindness turns combustible. Ever read numbers so crooked they make a straight man dizzy? Hal spent Black Friday interrogating bank statements instead of customers. A pattern emerged. Weekly cash transfers to Harborview Consulting LLC. He drove to the listed address, expecting an office. Found a shuttered strip mall salon with a for lease sign flapping like a guilty flag. Back home, Cynthia claimed ignorance too quickly, too smoothly. But Emily flinched at the name Harborview. Hal saw it the way a carpenter spots a warped plank at 40 paces. He followed her later to the attic, where she rifled an old filing cabinet. When confronted, Emily broke like damp plywood. "Dad, I only borrowed. For the app. It's going to revolutionize senior pet care. Investors wanted collateral." She confessed to forging Hal's signature, with Uncle Ben, Hal's kid brother, corporate lawyer turned opportunist, guiding her through routine paperwork. Cynthia, panicked by IRS letters, had sold her jewelry to cover earlier holes, terrified to tell Hal. Emily, whispering, "I was protecting you from worry." Hal, flat by detonating my life savings behind my back? Thoughtful. In the garage, Hal rehearsed 1,000 curse words but swallowed them like rusty nails. YouTube wouldn't approve, and regrets age poorly in public. Instead, he plotted a quieter demolition. Sunday evening, he invited Ben for family beers. Served ginger ale instead. Hal clicked a tape recorder on the counter. "Explain Harborview, counselor." Ben's grin deflated like a cheap balloon. The recorder whirred. Cynthia's eyes watered. Emily hugged herself as if her bones no longer belonged. "This is the midway ramp. Every secret's engine is now roaring. Stay to witness whose brakes fail first, and how Hal aims to steer the wreck. A confession is easy. Consequences are where teeth meet bone." Hal gave Ben a deadline. Repay every cent by New Year's or face fraud charges. Ben laughed, wrong pitch, wrong brother. On Christmas Eve, Hal discovered the store's deed already reassigned. Ben had anticipated threats and accelerated the sale to a shadow buyer. Snow fell like shredded contracts as Hal broke the news to his staff. Shelves stood half empty, echoing decades of loyal chatter now silenced. Hal, internal, they trusted me. I trusted blood. Turns out, rust in the veins corrodes faster than on the tools. Determined not to be the last one fooled, Hal tracked the buyer, a shell corporation leading to Northbrook Capital, whose board included Emily, listed as Innovation Advisor. She'd gambled on a cash-out to fund version 2.0 of her pet care dream after the first investors bailed. Ben pocketed a broker fee. Cynthia signed the dotted line under emotional blackmail. Save Emily's future or watch her drown in debt. New Year's night, Hal rented the town hall, inviting every employee, family member, and nosy neighbor. He screened a slideshow, bank drafts, forged signatures, corporate registry screenshots. The projector's cold light painted guilt on the walls. Emily sobbed. Ben attempted lawyerly gymnastics. Cynthia crumpled like tissue in rain. The audience gasped, murmured, divided between schadenfreude and sympathy. Hal's voice sliced through. Betrayal isn't a single act. It's a season ticket to someone else's ruin. My ride ends tonight. He announced the store would close, but severance was covered. He'd mortgaged their house that morning to honor payroll. Hal, internal, if dignity's expensive, I'll pay retail. You think rock bottom is flat? Wait until you see how Hal digs for forgiveness, and whether anyone bothers pulling him out. Can a shattered family build anything sturdier than the wreckage they caused? January thaw dripped from gutters when Emily showed up at the empty hardware store, cardboard box in hand. Inside lay a cashier's check, Ben's sports car liquidated. Emily's app shares sold to a competitor, Cynthia's heirloom ring bought back from the pawnshop. The total covered the fraudulent loan plus interest. She slid the box across the scarred counter. Emily, voice trembling, no pitch deck this time. Just restitution. If you never speak to me again, I'll understand. Hal lifted the ring, its tiny diamond dull under fluorescent gloom. A pebble that started an avalanche, he mused. He remembered teaching Emily to ride a bike on this very floor after hours, her handlebars taped bright pink. Betrayal hadn't erased those Saturdays. It only graffiti tagged them with pain. He spoke quietly. Money patches holes, kid, but it doesn't rebuild trust. That takes lumber. You mill yourself, one board at a time. He placed the ring in his pocket but left the check untouched. I'll cash it. The rest, time will tell. Days later, Hal signed papers to reopen Whitaker Hardware as a cooperative owned by its employees. He'd stay on as mentor, wages equal to everyone else. Cynthia, after weeks of counseling, joined the co-op's bookkeeping team under external audit supervision. They attended sessions together, learning to argue without arson. Ben, disbarred and selling used boats 3 counties over. Hal mailed him a postcard. Hope the hulls don't leak like your ethics. No return address. On the first morning the co-op opened, Hal flipped the welcome sign, inhaled the scent of cedar shingles stacked near the door, and felt something unexpected. A sliver of gratitude embedded in the scar tissue. Hal, internal trust rebuilt isn't factory new. It's reclaimed wood, knots, cracks, stories preserved. Stronger if you respect where it cracked before. In the parking lot, Emily planted a community garden where the old delivery bay had stood. She waved timidly. Hal waved back. No hugs, not yet. But the soil was tilled, seeds in hand, and spring was patient. What if a brand new board cracks before you've even pulled the old screw? Spring drifted in smelling of wet sawdust, and the Whitaker and Partners co-op finally posted its first profit. The till chimed like a child's xylophone. Even the auditor's spreadsheets smiled. That same day, a gleaming billboard rose at the town line. BuildSphere home supplies at wholesale prices. A chain powered by algorithms and corporate handbooks had come to swallow local craftsmen like a giant gulping peas. Hal held steady in public, yet at night he lay awake listening to shutters bang. Is this still your store? Or just a coffee break before the next fall? Buildsphere played rough. Within a week, it poached 2 of Whitaker's best stockhands with promises of health insurance and gym passes. 3 days later came the Good Neighbor Drive. Free nails for every resident. Those nails undercut the co-op's prices to the bone. Emily, now a volunteer marketer, pitched a countermove. Let's give people skill, not a discount. The tiny showroom filled with neighbors eager to learn how to silence squeaky steps or trim a door. A local TV crew caught Hal smiling, holding a handplane like a microphone of dignity. That evening someone hacked the co-op's website and dumped the entire bookkeeping ledger onto the town forum. Profits, debts, supplier codes, everything. Buildsphere denied involvement, but its store manager, Tom Reed, Hal's old schoolmate, wore a grin that looked tailor-made for lockpicks. Hal, to himself, Betrayal these days comes in branded t-shirts, not masks. A late-night member meeting boiled. Joe the carpenter shouted for a fire sale price slash. May the bookkeeper wanted a loan. Teenage intern Caleb proposed live stream tutorials instead of a price war. Hal sharpened a pencil as if it were a knife and listened. At dawn he gave his verdict. We won't dump prices. We'll teach folks that a cheap screw snaps in a frost and bad advice crumbles walls. Our weapon is lifetime backing. His voice quavered, his gaze didn't. They launched the lifetime advice guarantee. Buy a screw, earn free calls to a master if anything goes wrong. People hesitated, tested, then told their neighbors. Buildsphere fired 3 more ad salvos, yet its warehouse cathedral never matched the draw of human counsel. But by closing time, the supplier catalog and the cloud server password were missing from Emily's computer. Hal, to himself, will the daughter who's already stepped on one rusty nail do it again? The data is gone. Suspicions thicken. The new competitor seems blind. Yet somebody inside is stacking the deck. Stay to learn where the pendulum of trust will swing next. How many skulls can the hammer of mistrust crack before you find the real fracture? A dawn smell of ozone and panic pulled Hal to a burning warehouse. Firefighters battled flames while warranty slips melted like candles. Cameras had been neatly disabled. From the ashes jutted a warped sign. Service beats discounts. The detective asked whether Hal had enemies. Hal could name them, but one worm gnawed deeper than the rest. A straight dirt road ran from Buildsphere to the charred shed, across the field where he and store manager Tom Reed had played as boys. Yet the trap snapped elsewhere. An IT log showed a midnight data upload from Emily's laptop, matching the moment the cameras died. Buildsphere's server received the same packet 20 minutes later. Hal whispering you again. Emily, white-faced. I had nothing to do with the fire. Tom just wanted sales stats, said he was studying the co-op model. I thought it was honest research. Trust seemed newly bought, wrapped in market benefits, and thrown into the blaze. That evening the town meeting demanded a scapegoat. The mayor urged calm, but smoke still flavored the air with blame. Tom Reed arrived pressed and polished, lawyer in tow, offering Hal a Buildsphere franchise in the spirit of friendship. Hal stared at his childhood friend and spotted a gray ash print on Reed's pristine sneakers. Tom had always believed life was a leaderboard. Hal clicked on the pocket recorder he carried since Ben's scheme. Tom, what time did you visit the warehouse at midnight? Reed brushed him off, until Hal slid a GPS dump from Reed's phone across the table, quietly harvested by young Caleb. The room erupted, half shouting for Emily's arrest, the rest for Tom's. Police walked them both out like twin broken mirrors. No one knew which reflection held truth. Hal, to himself, what hurts most is when truth doesn't break in half. It shatters into glittering dust. Late that night, Hal sat in the dark store, fingering a charred warranty tag. Caleb emerged from behind the racks. Look! He showed laptop traffic logs. Tom had siphoned data while Emily was still in the Faro Cafe. The timestamps didn't match. She'd been gullible, not incendiary. Police soon found a fuel can in Reed's trunk and, on his lawyer's desk, a bonus contract payable if the co-op folded. Emily walked free by dawn. Accessory by negligence. Nothing more. An acquittal doesn't erase the scar. Can Emily Sand trust smooth like an old board? Or will the split keep spreading? Next chapter reveals the price of one last shot at saving what hasn't burned away. Can you resurrect a house when ash has seeped into the foundation itself? While Tom awaited trial, Buildsphere hurriedly shuttered its branch, abandoning staff like a chess player sacrifices a pawn. The town felt the aftertaste of its cheap nails. They rusted within a month. The co-op, though, teetered. The fire had erased 40% of stock. The insurer stalled. The bank wanted fresh collateral. At a hushed shareholders' meeting, fear perched on every shoulder like a sooty sparrow. Hal rose. I failed you thinking personal honor scares sharks. Sharks don't blush. He proposed a drastic cut. Sell the building, go online, lay off half the crew. Silence rang like an empty hammer. Emily stepped forward. Let me drive a nail right this time. She displayed a signed contract. Her long-refined senior pet care app had sold to a national vet chain. Clause 1. Her entire advance would rebuild the co-op under its own name, becoming that chain's tool supplier for every clinic. The money covered debts and repairs, while the chain would host free workshops in the store, bringing traffic back. Hal, softly, you sure this isn't another detour? Emily, if it crashes, I lose everything. But if we don't try, the store dies. I can't break your faith twice. The worker owners voted unanimously. Accept the deal. Knowing the cost of mistakes, Hal formed a 3-member oversight board to audit quarterly. He himself became a mentor without veto power. Trust should rest on structure, not charisma. 3 months later, pallets of tools stood where the air still hinted of smoke. Above a new register hung the motto Fair Price Plus Lifetime Advice beside a paw print logo, the partnership's mark. Shoppers came for screws and left with pet food, litter scoops, and a vet referral. Profits returned, but more importantly, so did the town's sense of commons. At the first post-fire anniversary, Hal raised a wooden mug Caleb had CNC carved. We used to drink from dented cans. Now from what we shape ourselves. Wood remembers everything, yet it can take a new form. He handed the cup to Emily, who gripped it as if holding the pulse of her redemption. Cynthia stood nearby, light as a May breeze, for once without the shadow of total control in her eyes. Hal, to himself, trust doesn't come back as a check or a certificate. It returns as a scar that stopped hurting. A reminder where not to lean the ladder when you paint the future. That evening the 3 of them closed the shutters. No fanfare, just the steady glide of a freshly oiled hinge, whispering that life, like a door, may crack but can always be rehung. Resolution. The town now called the co-op, the store that outran the flame. Hal used different words. We're a workshop of mistakes, replaned into experience. And every customer who left with a new driver bit also carried a quiet reminder. Betrayal isn't a sentence if someone's willing to hand you the best tool of all, a second chance.
He brought her roses every Friday. And broke her ribs every second Saturday. You won't believe what finally made her fight back. The kitchen smelled of chicken, garlic, and something old. Maybe it was hope. Or the leftover fear hiding under Linda's concealer, the kind she could apply in 30 seconds even with shaking hands. She set the table like peace depended on it. Knife to the left, fork to the right, napkin folded perfectly, a single flower in a glass between the salt and pepper, because John likes it that way. "Mama, why do you always do that?" asked 6-year-old Sarah from her stool. "Because it makes Daddy happy," Linda replied. "And when Daddy's happy," she stopped herself. No need to finish that lie. John entered in slippers like a king, tall, neatly combed, with a public smile and private fists. "Where's dinner?" "It's on the table," Linda said softly, with the precise tone she'd mastered, not too firm, not too weak. They ate in silence. Sarah talked about preschool and drew shapes in her mashed potatoes. Then Linda slipped up. "John, maybe we could take Sarah to the zoo tomorrow?" He paused. Napkin to mouth. That sniper stare. "Plenty of free time, huh?" Not a question. A loaded gun. Later, as Linda stood at the sink, he came up behind her. "Quiet. Close. You trying to make me look like an idiot in front of the kid?" She didn't answer. Any answer was the wrong one. He hit her. Once. Enough. Sarah cried in the other room. Linda closed her eyes, not from pain. From habit. That night, after she put Sarah to bed, she opened her laptop. Searched, "How to fake your death and not be found." Deleted it. Typed, "How to escape with a child and never be tracked." Then stood in front of the mirror. Her cheek was already swelling. She whispered, "You're not dinnerware. You're a human. And a mother." What happened next changed everything. You won't want to miss what comes next. She finally said the word no. But what he did next wasn't anger, it was something far more dangerous. If you think you know how abusers react to defiance, think again. That morning, she didn't return home after preschool drop-off. Instead, she took 2 buses to a women's center on the other side of the city. "Name?" the receptionist asked. "Linda Mason," she answered. "Reason for visit?" "I need to stop being afraid." In a counseling room that smelled of cheap coffee and worn-out hope, she finally said it all. He didn't start with hitting. He started with rules. Then breaking chairs. Then breaking me. "Any family support?" "My sister. But her hell looks a lot like mine." They offered her a safe house. Not a shelter, a secret address, a clean bed, quiet. That night, she returned home with a different look in her eyes. John was watching TV. Eating steak. Relaxed. "How was your day?" he asked. "I thought about our future." He didn't look at her. But when she showered, he went through her things. Her bag. Her phone. Her documents. Later, as she dried her hair, he asked, "Where were you?" "Grocery store." "Lie again." "You checked?" "Of course," he said calmly. Too calmly. "You've been smiling too much. That means you're hiding something." He stepped closer. Eyes like ice. "If you do something behind my back, I won't hit. I'll destroy." She didn't blink. But inside, the decision was already made. This is the breaking point. Everything you've waited for, it starts now. She packed just 1 bag, and a decade of silence. But you can't quietly escape a man who lives for control. The moment she turned the handle, she stopped being invisible. 4:12 a.m. The house was silent. Linda wore a coat over her pajamas. 1 bag, documents, meds, a few clothes, Sarah's stuffed bear. She picked up her daughter, already dressed, tiptoed to the door. The handle clicked. "Where are you going?" "John." From the shadows. "I'm taking her to the doctor." "At 4 a.m.? He moved closer. Grabbed her arm. "You think I'm stupid?" "I think you're dangerous." He grabbed Sarah. "We're a family, damn it." "We were. Until you broke it." Police sirens. Blue lights. He didn't know she had triggered a panic app. He screamed. Cursed. They arrested him. She left. With Sarah. With a bruise. And with her spine finally straight. That night, in a clean bed, Sarah asked, "Is this our house now?" "No, sweetie. This is our start." And just when she thought she was safe, the past showed up in court. What happened next, you won't believe. She thought escaping was the hard part. But then the court asked, "Where's the proof?" You'll be shocked who showed up to defend her abuser. The shelter smelled like detergent and caution. Then the lawyer called. Trial's on Friday. Anne. John brought a witness. His sister. Joan. Linda whispered. She stayed in our guest room when her husband hit her. She's testifying you're unstable. Linda nearly dropped the phone. Court day. John smiled in his suit. No, he told the judge. I never hit her. She's emotional. Confused. Joan took the stand. Called Linda paranoid. Unfit. Linda stood. Straight-backed. He didn't need fists. He used silence. Control. He convinced me I was insane, until I started believing it. Evidence was submitted. Photos. Doctor reports. Audio recordings. Still, the judge seemed unsure. You look calm, her lawyer said. But they want proof. Not just pain. Linda left the courtroom thinking. Then I'll give them proof. The kind you can't deny. And the next night, John did something that made sure no one ever doubted her again. He thought he'd silenced her. But the moment he broke into the shelter, she finally found her voice, and the whole world heard it. What happened that night became a headline. And a reckoning. 2:31 a.m. Glass shattered. John broke into the shelter. Linda. Come out. Drunk. Wild-eyed. Screaming through the hallway. Linda didn't run. She went live on her phone. This man, my ex, has a restraining order. And he's here. In a shelter. At night. With children. He ran toward her. Saw the phone. The light. The guards tackled him. Police came. Handcuffed him on camera. That video went viral. Headline. Survivor films ex violating restraining order at women's shelter. Public exploded. Law changed. Court ruled. Small Blue Diamond Linda, full custody. Small Blue Diamond John, probation, therapy, lifetime restraining order. She got a job. At that very shelter. First day, she told another woman. Don't wait for it to get worse. The bruises don't have to get darker before you walk. Later, Sarah drew a yellow sun. Why yellow this time? Because it's not scared anymore. The end.
How far can one pleasant favor bend before it snaps like a high-tension cable? Robert Kingsley spent 38 years pushing worry and birthday cards through other people's doors, memorizing addresses like prayers. Retirement lasted 4 days before the universe shoved a side quest into his arthritic hands. A flash flood pounded Prairie Lane the afternoon he saw Evelyn Ward, thin, rain-soaked, arms full of busted grocery bags, stumble across her driveway. Instinct blurred thought. Robert sprinted, scooping cans and oranges with the reflex of a man who once hot-potatoed angry terriers. Inside her porch he handed over the goods and felt the air shift, furniture placed with the precision of regret, curtains stapled shut, air freshener battling something older than mildew. A watercolor clung to the fridge, stick figures, one huge and black, eclipsing the others. Upstairs, a thud. Evelyn's smile collapsed inward. "My son's restless," she murmured, covering a bruise blooming yellow on her wrist. Robert started toward the stairs. The front door opened first. Blake Ward filled the frame, a corporate-issue jaw and a name badge from Midwest Steel. His greeting was pure sheet metal sheer. "Wrong address, hero." Robert retreated into the storm, plaque-polished shoes squelching. Yet the towering black figure in that child's painting trailed him home. At 3 a.m. he wrote "Community Watch" in a notebook older than most marriages and couldn't sleep until birds negotiated dawn. 3 nights later, a circle of neighbors convened in Gloria Ramirez's garage, more curious about coffee cake than crusade. They swapped rumors, shouting behind curtained windows, a police call that never got logged, Daniel Ward's vanished school enrollment. Retired cop Harold Dempsey muttered, "Domestic live wire, touch it wrong, you fry." The meeting ended with no plan but too much electricity to dissipate. Evil dislikes fluorescent lighting. Robert pressed on. He slipped Evelyn a newspaper with his number scrawled beneath. "Hang a white towel if you need help." 2 sunsets passed. No towel. Only Evelyn lugging heavy trash to the curb, makeup failing to hide new green and purple geography across her cheek. Their eyes met. In that flicker she signed a treaty he couldn't read but understood. At midnight, sirens wailed somewhere else, yet Robert woke sweating as if they'd parked on his lawn. By sunrise he'd posted flyers, self-defense workshop, Saturday, church hall. Free. He called old army pals for padded gear and legal disclaimers. And still he watched the Ward house. Curtains never moved. Shadows did. What happened next rewrote the neighborhood's quiet script. You won't want to miss how the real thunder starts. What does it cost when the truth refuses to wear a seatbelt? Blake Ward's kingdom ran on precision, punctual lawn stripes, duplicated dinners, bruises he timed to fade before church. Monday morning his SUV reversed with submarine silence. Robert noted the license plate bolt rust, every minor detail a breadcrumb trail. The moment tires vanished, he marched to Evelyn's door armed with courage, a thermos, and the shaky authority of good intentions. Evelyn opened just wide enough for fear to breathe through. Inside, 17-year-old Daniel rocked on a hallway rug, headphones leaking rhythmic static. Robert knelt, offered him a fingerprint-smudged baseball card. Daniel's fingers fluttered but wouldn't take it. He trusts paper more than people, Evelyn whispered, voice cracked like backyard ice. Coffee cooled while Evelyn unfolded years, Blake's promotion-driven moves, the night Daniel flinched at a slammed door and Blake labeled autism, defiance, the disciplinary lessons. School counselors filed reports, HR buried them. Blake's corporate lawyer delivered cease and desist letters to anyone curious. Robert's pulse drummed. You need out. Out to where? She gestured around the immaculate prison. He tracks every charge card. My sister's states away with dialysis bills. Shelter waitlists laugh. Robert's retired mailman brain sorted addresses into allies. Gloria Ramirez had an empty basement apartment. The rent was stale banana bread and conversation about 1978. He walked Evelyn through escape logistics, burner phone, cashback groceries for hidden funds, a safe word, victory lap, to text when Blake left town. Evelyn shook her head until Daniel looked up and signed run with trembling hands. Consent spelled in desperation. By Friday, Robert's porch screened in maps, receipts, and adrenaline. Community Watch morphed into covert op. Harold Dempsey agreed to trail Blake using the world's rustiest pickup. Gloria stockpiled blankets. Mrs. Cho hacked together a drone camera from her grandson's science fair remains. Suburbia weaponized itself. Then the game changed. Blake requested a surprise audit trip, 5 days in Omaha. Perfect. Except the night before departure he found a single grocery receipt missing. Rage hammered walls. Evelyn texted Victory Lap, yet the message froze unsent. Blake had installed spyware. Robert's landline rang static, then Blake's voice low as a snake under snow. Mailman, mind your route. Line went dead. Robert's plan collapsed like wet cardboard. Blake postponed his trip, chained the inside doors, even bolted Daniel's window. Fear metastasized into resolve. Robert marched to Sheriff Pearson at dawn, evidence binder in hand. The sheriff hesitated. Blake funded the town's holiday lights, but a deputy glanced at Daniel's bruises in those photos and left for a warrant. Bureaucracy stalled, judges sleep in on Saturday. That night Robert received a text from an unknown number, towel hung. Help. Photo attached, a white dish towel fluttering behind a barred attic pane. He dialed every ally. Harold gunned the pickup. Mrs. Cho launched her drone. Gloria prayed while stuffing car keys in Robert's fist. They arrived beneath a starless sky. Blake's truck gone. Door locked. Drone feed showed Daniel pounding attic boards. Robert busted the back window with a garden rock, retirement plaque finally useful. Alarms shrieked. Daniel bolted into Robert's arms, Evelyn limping behind. Headlights speared the driveway. Blake's truck earlier than expected. He roared out wielding a tire iron. Robert, 68, squared shoulders he hadn't used since Nixon resigned. Time for slogans was over. This is the tipping point. All the quiet whispers are about to scream. Stay tuned to see who gets silenced and who refuses. Can courage outrun a ticking clock when every second screams for blood? Blake charged, tire iron carving night air. Robert's reflexes, half-rusted, half-marine, pivoted. Steel-kissed mailbox metal, a gong no neighbor slept through. Gloria's floodlights flared, silhouettes multiplying behind hedges. Community watch assembled like late-blooming superheroes armed with smartphones and panic. Evelyn shielded Daniel behind a sedan. Blake swung again, Robert blocked with a trash can lid, sarcastic salute, returned to sender. Sparks flew. The clash staggered across lawn and sprinkler heads until Harold's pickup screeched curbside. The ex-cop emerged, shotgun unloaded but menacing. Put it down, Blake. Police sirens crescendoed. Blake barked, I own this block, and lunged. Harold tackled him, tire iron skittered away. Officers flooded, cuffs clicked. Body cams recorded neighbors chanting address after address of prior calls ignored by dispatch. Blake's eyes flicked from badge to camera, realizing corporate immunity was allergic to live streams. At the station, Evelyn recited her testimony in a voice scraped raw. Robert sat beside Daniel, showing him envelope art tricks, fold, flip, create a paper bird. Daniel finally whispered, fly? Robert nodded, all the way. 2 weeks later, preliminary hearing. Blake's lawyer argued stress, false memories. Prosecutor unveiled drone footage of attic bars, photos of Daniel's bruises arranged like an audit of cruelty. The judge denied bail. Blake's roar echoed marble halls, but no thunder followed, only the soft shuffle of paperwork promising trial. Yet victory stubbed its toe on family court. State services debated Daniel's placement, mother deemed codependent, finances unstable. Evelyn might lose her son to foster care. Robert watched bureaucrats measure trauma with spreadsheets and felt lava simmer. He rallied the neighborhood again, fundraisers, affidavits vouching for Evelyn's caregiving, even Mrs. Cho's shy nephew coding a donation site that crashed under kindness traffic. On ruling day, the courtroom overflowed with gray hair and homemade muffins. The judge reviewed the community's mountain of support, glanced at Daniel's quiet watercolor, this time stick figures hand in hand, no looming shadow. Gavel struck. Evelyn retains custody, conditional on residence at Gloria's apartment and weekly counseling. Applause broke courtroom decorum. The bailiff let it ride. Outside, press microphones angled like hungry birds. Robert faced them, throat tight. Abuse grows in silence. We mailed our conscience back to ourselves. Cameras loved the soundbite. Donations doubled by sundown. Back home, Robert set his retirement plaque on the curb for scrap. His mailbox now bore a new sign. Need help? Knock. Everything you waited for? It's happening, but the fight just changed arenas. Stick around to see who rebuilds and who rusts. When the dust settles, who mops up the scars? Spring crept into Prairie Lane with hesitant sunshine, as if weather itself waited for permission. Blake remained in county jail, psych evaluation pending, trial date floating like oil on water. Yet trauma is an echo, and echoes love empty houses. Evelyn, Daniel, and Robert met each dawn on Gloria's porch. Coffee steamed, silence thawed. Daniel painted daily, first a cracked mailbox, then one stitched together with gold leaf, finally a landscape, storm clouds parting above 3 figures, colors bold, deliberate. Robert framed it in the church hall where Community Watch held weekly classes, self-defense, budgeting, legal literacy. Corporate suits visited town, sniffing reputational damage. Midwest Steel issued a statement about isolated personal matters. The Holiday Lights Fund quietly doubled, guilt is tax deductible. Robert redirected half toward a scholarship labeled Run, Daniel, Run. One gray afternoon Blake's lawyer offered a plea. No contest, mandatory counseling, 5-year restraining order. Evelyn's stomach flipped. Daniel's therapist warned of re-traumatization if trial dragged on. Robert listened, eyes on a sparrow trapped inside the courthouse atrium. We free it or it breaks its neck, he muttered. Evelyn nodded. She wanted freedom more than vengeance. Blake pleaded no contest. Court banned him within 500 yards. He exited, ankle monitor blinking like a dying star. No cheers, only the rustle of restraining orders printing. Life didn't become a postcard. Evelyn wrestled nightmares, Daniel flinched at doorbells, Robert's knees forecasted rain. Yet healing took root. Daniel enrolled in online art classes. His first commissioned mural covered the church hall wall, a flock of envelopes unfolding into birds across a sunrise. On the anniversary of the storm, the neighborhood threw a mailbox march. Residents repainted their boxes in outrageous colors, turquoise, sunflower, dragon scales, each symbolizing a promise to notice bruises, to knock twice, to interfere. Robert, limping with pride, cut the ribbon. After speeches, he opened a plain white envelope addressed to him. Inside, Daniel's drawing of Robert wearing a mailbag made of sunrise. A single line of teen handwriting, "You delivered us." The old postman cried like window glass in winter, quietly, behind sunglasses. Sarcasm finally failed him, and that was its own small miracle. When cameras asked for a final quote, Robert smiled soft as worn leather, "Storms come back. So will we." And for once the headline matched the heart. 10 years later, does the past still forward its mail? At the Merrow Falls Arts Center hangs a canvas 4 yards wide, a mail truck braving monsoon waves, headlights carving hope through rain. Tourists admire technique. Docents explain the autistic artist. Daniel Ward donated the piece to fund domestic violence shelters statewide. An elderly docent with a crooked knee limps through crowds. Robert Kingsley, honorary guide on Fridays, telling anyone who'll listen that wave there? It's supposed to look scary. But see the little bird on the roof? That's belief. Outside, thunder grumbles. Robert checks the sky, then the museum's sturdy roof, satisfied both will hold. Some storms, after all, end up framed reminders, not threats. And every exit sign over every gallery door glows white as a towel in the window, forever ready to summon help that now knows exactly where to go. Chapter 1: The Gift That Should Have Stayed Buried. What kind of father mails his grown son a 20-pound lockbox, no key, no instructions, just a post-it that says, "You earned this"? Rain still drips from Ralph Harlow's sleeves as he hefts the dented metal cube onto the narrow foyer table of his quiet New England colonial. The thing smells like motor oil and cedar, the scent his late father wore like cheap cologne. Beth, stirring marinara in the next room, eyes it warily. Please tell me it isn't another stuffed trout. If we're lucky, it's gold bars. If we're cursed, it's Dad's sense of humor. A righteous impulse strikes. Ralph dials Sister June and Brother Teddy. We open it together. We're not turning into him. He goes to bed proud until 2:17 a.m. when Uncle Leonard croaks through the landline. Bury the box, Ralph. Lose it. I'm begging you. Click. Injustice delivered like certified mail. Saturday chores evaporate under speculation. The mower stays parked. Ralph's head runs mortgage numbers and unsaid funeral debts. By afternoon, June arrives with exorcism cupcakes, Teddy with a toolbox, all three circling the lockbox like archaeologists around a cursed idol. Prudence wins, they'll crack it tomorrow. Before dawn, Ralph scribbles on the fridge whiteboard, trust is earned, not inherited. Upstairs, family photos grin in sepia innocence. Somewhere in the dark a harmonica seems to inhale. Tomorrow we'll crack this shell, he mutters, surrendering to uneasy sleep. What happens next rewrites 50 years of family history. Stick around for the detonation. Chapter 2, The Screwdriver, the Photograph, and the Phone Call. Ever pry open a secret only to find it staring right back at you? Twilight and storm clouds bruise the sky. Teddy plunges Dad's old screwdriver, rust flakes like ancient confetti. The lid finally groans open. First layer, a Polaroid, 1979, Dad on a lakeside dock, arm around a teenage girl no one recognizes. June, deadpan, some trout. Teddy, secret sister discount? Below it, notarized packets naming Dad legal guardian of Marigold Bellamy. County records list no such adoption. Beth's laptop confirms legal ghost. Power flickers. The landline rings ancient, wired, impossible to silence. An elderly voice rasps, if you open the box, it's too late. He's coming. Click. Static. Nothing. Lightning snaps, a branch shatters the living room window. Among the scattered contents, a brass key stamped L cabin, stained receipts, and a cassette labeled for L. The storm outside just met the storm inside. Next chapter, watch the house learn to tremble. Chapter 3, Stormwatch and Memory Hunt. How do you outrun a secret that already knows your address? Rain hammers the roof like artillery. Flashlights in hand, the siblings raid the attic, unearthing a dusty recorder. Dad's gravelly voice fills the kitchen. If they're hearing this, I failed twice. Protect Marigold. Protect the debt. No context, just harmonica fade out. Memories realign. June recalls Mom's migraines syncing with lake trips. Teddy remembers a stranger handing him candy at a gas station, whispering family. Ralph finally admits once seeing a girl on a fog-bound dock. The jigsaw pieces cut them as they lock together. Front door slams, Mom, soaked and shaking. She spots the photo, folds into a chair. She was supposed to forgive us, she whispers. Thunder blanks the rest. Candles bloom when the power dies. In their flicker, the lockbox looks smaller, but the hole it tore in family myth yawns wider. When dawn breaks, the past will knock on their door, and this time it wears a face. Chapter 4, Marigold's Shadow. Can you mourn someone you've never met right before she shows up on your porch? Morning sun fakes peace. A knock echoes. A gray-haired woman with the exact ice blue Harlow eyes stands outside. I'm Marigold Bellamy, then Harlow, then nobody. Coffee brews, tensions percolate. Ralph offers a mug, June clutches a pie plate like a shield. Teddy blurts, are you suing us? Marigold's half-smile, not yet. She recounts her life, fostered by Dad, hidden in boarding school when bank fraud charges loomed. Mom demanded she disappear, Dad forged papers. His fishing trips were contraband visits. The trust fund? Real, until Mom borrowed it to save the family home during the '92 recession. Leonard barrels in, lighter raised, lunging for Dad's sealed final letter. Some truths won't help you, he snarls. June tackles him, cupcakes fly, the envelope survives. Everything you waited for sits inside that letter. Next chapter, ink becomes shrapnel. Chapter 5, A Reading the Unreadable. Which hurts more, the truth you fear, or the truth they redact for you? Chairs form a makeshift jury box. Ralph unfolds the letter, pages tremble. Dad's confession unfurls. He never returned Marigold. He forged release forms, paid headmasters, then lost the trust fund in a doomed land scheme. Leonard tried to fix it. Your mother traded her halo to keep a roof over your heads. I left Marigold with promises instead of presents. Marigold sits stone still until the final line. I pray my children will pay what I couldn't. Her shoulders quake, no sob, just a tectonic shift. Mom pleads foreclosure for hungry kids. June calls it theft wrapped in motherhood. Teddy, charm exhausted, brands them moral pickpockets. Ralph, eldest by default, suddenly hates being the family's bench judge. Apologies cost nothing. Restitution will cost everything. Watch the balance sheet ignite. Chapter 6, The Reckoning Ledger. How do you invoice a lifetime of absence? Ralph proposes restitution, sell the lake cabin, auction antiques, split the proceeds with Marigold. Mom protests heirlooms are memories. June snaps they were bought with her future. Teddy volunteers to empty the attic, penance by elbow grease. Leonard storms out vowing lawyers. Marigold counters calmly, no money until Mom signs a public admission and restores Marigold's surname in county records. It's reclamation, not revenge. June invites a local journalist. Headline the next morning, Lost Daughter rewrites Harlow legacy. Town gossip tastes fresh meat. Oddly, the noise feels lighter than silence ever did. Resolution looms, but scars decide who heals. One chapter left to tally the cost of grace. Chapter 7, Quiet Morning, Louder Hearts. Can forgiveness taste like black coffee, bitter, necessary, warming? 30 days later, the siblings gather at the renovated lake cabin. Windows broadcast loon calls instead of lies. They hand Marigold a modest check. She tears it. I'm starting a scholarship, Dad's name, my purpose. Foster kids need exits, not excuses. Mom arrives with homemade bread, visibly lighter. Thank you for letting me confess somewhere besides the church booth. I'm not absolving you, Marigold replies. I'm choosing to live forward. A postcard from Leonard's rehab, still sarcastic, still alive, learning to earn oxygen. They read it aloud, laughing through lingering hurt. Sunrise gilds the water. Ralph skips stones, each ripple feels less like fallout, more like possibility. Legacy isn't what you inherit, his inner voice murmurs, it's what you repair. Silence settles, the clean kind that can finally hold a future. Chapter 8, When Gratitude Turns into a Lawsuit. What happens when the bill for goodwill arrives, stamped court summons? The grand opening of the Harlow Bellamy Future Launch Scholarship brims with banners and good press, until a lawyer from Bay Shore Mutual hands Marigold a red-striped envelope, final notice. The bank claims that 30 years ago Grandpa's corporate deposit was siphoned into a private account, the exact sum Dad once promised Marigold. Signatures? Uncle Leonard's and teenage Ralph's, allegedly scrawled to save the family. Ralph hears legal buzzwords like distant thunder, minor cosigner, wire fraud, federal charges. The bank demands the principal plus triple-digit interest, 10 times the original amount, or it files in federal court. Mom pales. From rehab, Leonard leaves a voice message, told you not to dig. Some closets burst with skeletons bearing notary stamps. Thought truth would bring peace? Wait till next chapter, good and evil will swap seats so fast you'll lose track of the score. Chapter 9, The Town That Swore We Owed Them. How do you defend your honor when the whole town insists it's their property? Another blow, neighbors circulate a petition demanding the family home and the entire lakeside block be sold to cover the bank debt. Turns out Dad once convinced many of them to invest in that same bank, promising government-backed returns. Their life savings vanished. Every mailbox now sports a placard, Harlow's Pay Up. Local radio, once charmed by Harlow cookouts, airs a live rant. They enjoyed our lemonade. Time to settle the tab. June fires back, have the receipt for that lemonade? I'll write you a check scented with citrus. Ralph proposes a community trust. Proceeds from selling part of the lake lot will go to compensate burned investors. The crowd wants everything now. Marigold steps forward, voice steady. I was robbed first. But if we act unjustly again, we become what we hate. The sheriff schedules town hearings, a public trial in all but name. The bank's attorney beams, angry crowds boost his billable hours. This is the crescendo. Everything you waited for hits the stage of the town hall. Stay tuned to see whether the family stands tall or crumbles in front of a live audience. Chapter 10, History Tallies, Mercy Balances. Is it possible to win by signing a capitulation on your own terms? The hall is packed, bankers, retirees, press, kids eating popcorn like it's theater. Ralph steps to the mic, folder in shaking hands. Our father promised interest he couldn't pay. 1. The lakefront parcel transfers into a public trust managed by the town. 2. Our house stays under lien until the bank is repaid. 3. Marigold chairs the oversight board so victims get a voice, not just invoices. Murmurs swirl. The plan covers 80% of the debt within 10 years and gives the town a revenue-generating park. Everyone hesitates, punish or accept. Mrs. Dalton, who lost her pension, stands. Your father promised dollars. You're giving my grandson a lake where I once dreamed of fishing with my husband. To me, that's interest of the soul. Applause melts anger, refusing would look monstrous. The banker signs. Later, on the dock, Mom asks Marigold, "Are you sure you want to stay here? I'll grow to love this place the way it will grow into the truth." Leonard's final letter arrives. He's cashing out an insurance policy to wipe the rest of the debt, closing the tab with our ghosts. Ralph stares at the quiet water. Some secrets don't die. They become memory fish you have to feed with honesty until they're full. Closing resolution. The family is still imperfect, but the town no longer whispers, it speaks aloud. Marigold leads school kids through the new Bellamy Harlow Lakeside Center, describing the trout hiding beneath the footbridge where her father once stood. Voiceover fades. Sometimes, to subtract old debts, you need new math. Pain plus confession equals peace. And the interest? People willing to trust again. End of story, and the beginning of a life without omissions.
Capítulo 1. Tormenta casera. ¿Cómo puede un asado dorado y una conciencia limpia convertirse en metralla? Sigue mirando, la bondad no siempre sabe cómo huele. David Whitlock pasó la mañana sirviendo sopa de pollo en termos para la despensa de la iglesia, bromeando que las calorías de caridad no cuentan. Elaine, su esposa desde hacía 21 años, adoraba cómo sus hombros se relajaban cuando ayudaba a desconocidos. Le sacó una foto, David sosteniendo el cucharón como un cetro, con la tapa de acero reluciendo detrás. Héroes de Instagram mayores de 40, se burló. A las 5 en punto llegaron sus padres, con una caja de pastel floral en la mano. Frank y Mildred Hoffman se enorgullecían de la respetabilidad tranquila. Una sala donde la alfombra aún mostraba las franjas de la aspiradora y un vocabulario tan pulido que, caray, era lo más áspero que salía de sus bocas. Adoraban a David, el corredor de seguros hecho a sí mismo que todavía abría la puerta a su hija. La cena fluyó con facilidad. Demasiada facilidad, diría Elaine después. La conversación saltó de los impuestos a la receta secreta de quiche sin corteza de Mildred. Entonces vibró el teléfono de David. Otro cliente, suspiró con teatralidad y se dirigió al pasillo. Elaine pasó la salsera, escuchando a medias. Algo en la voz de David, amortiguada pero afilada, le pinchó el pecho. Le oyó sisear, dije martes, martes. Las sílabas chasquearon como ramas húmedas. Volvió sonriendo, pero la tensión se le pegaba como hollín. Elaine, tironeada por la culpa, posó una mano calmante en su antebrazo. Día largo, susurró. La mandíbula de David se endureció. Ahora no, Elaine. Su voz, un tono demasiado alto, rebotó en la porcelana. Mildred intentó distraer, este asado está celestial, pero el aire se espesó. Frank carraspeó, la señal universal de portémonos. Cuando Elaine acercó cuidadosamente el salero, simple reflejo doméstico, él se encogió como si quemara. «¿Puedo alcanzar mi propia sal?», gruñó. Un latido. Y, más rápido de lo que cualquiera respiró, su palma estalló contra la mejilla de Elaine. El sonido fue pequeño pero cósmico, como la hoja de un calendario desgarrando el muro del tiempo. La cabeza de Elaine giró, su pendiente tintineó en el plato. Nadie habló. Dos padres, dos testigos atónitos del meteorito que partió su mito familiar. Elaine saboreó hierro y piel de patata. David inhaló, ojos desorbitados como si un extraño hubiera prestado su mano. «Mira lo que me obligas a hacer», murmuró, más alto esta vez, suplicando que la habitación compartiera la culpa. La servilleta de Frank cayó sobre la mesa. Mildred susurró el nombre de su hija, pero nadie se movió. Las copas temblaron. Afuera, un aspersor siseó, la vida ordinaria zumbando, indiferente. Elaine se alzó. Su silla gimió, indignada. Caminó hasta el fregadero, abrió el agua fría y oprimió una taza de porcelana contra su pómulo. Dentro de su cráneo comenzó una narración constante, así suena todo al romperse de golpe. No lloró. Las lágrimas validarían la violencia y se negaba a cuadrar tan pulcramente su balance. En cambio, imaginó el amanecer de mañana como un desafío. Aquella noche David durmió en el cuarto de invitados, la puerta quedó abierta, como si la culpa necesitara ventilación. Continuará. Lo que suceda luego arañará los bordes de su tranquila suburbia. No querrás perderte cómo se desdobla. Capítulo 2. La gente correcta no rompe platos, rompe votos. ¿Alguna vez viste el silencio convertido en arma con servilletas de lino y disculpas corteses? La mañana se extendió sobre Maple Avenue como sábanas limpias. El pómulo de Elaine lucía un hermoso morado, un moretón sospechosamente parecido a una prueba. En el desayuno, Mildred habló en murmullos de tacita. Frank insistió en llevar a Elaine a urgencias, balbuceando sobre documentación de seguro, aunque todos sabían que documentación era solo un eufemismo para evidencia. David empacó su maletín con precisión de contable. Hablaremos esta noche, dijo, besando el aire cerca de la cabeza de Elaine en vez de atreverse a tocarla. De camino a la puerta rozó a Frank, que se irguió pero se mantuvo diplomático porque, bueno, los hombres de su generación mantienen la caldera encendida fingiendo que no hay fuego. En el resplandor fluorescente de la clínica, Elaine ensayó frases: me di contra un armario, tropecé con el perro. Ninguna encajaba. Cuando la enfermera preguntó ¿qué ocurrió?, Elaine se sorprendió de su franqueza brutal. Mi marido ocurrió. La enfermera, digna de crédito, no se inmutó. Escribió incidente doméstico con letra pulcra y ofreció un folleto que nadie quiere plegar en el bolso. De vuelta en casa, Mildred frotó encimeras impecables, como si el orden pudiera desinfectar el día anterior. Tu padre nunca me levantó la mano, murmuró. La frase era mitad consuelo, mitad coartada. Elaine se preguntó por qué aquel calificativo olía a mentira por omisión. Nunca me levantó la mano, claro. Pero ¿qué más puede hacer un hombre decente con postura perfecta? David llegó de noche con lirios. Los pétalos se caían, sedientos tras un día atrapados en aire acondicionado. Lirios, la flor funeraria de las disculpas. Los colocó sobre la mesa de centro cual tratado de paz y arrancó un discurso calcetado de culpa corporativa. Estrés, plazos, clientes difíciles, su medicación para la presión. Dijo la palabra momentáneo 3 veces. Elaine escuchó, inventariando sus tics faciales como un crítico de arte estudia pinceladas. Cuando por fin susurró, no volverá a suceder, ella reconoció el tono, modo retención de clientes. Frank apareció en el pasillo, hombros cuadrados. Pídele perdón a mi hija. David tragó. Lo estoy, dijo. No lo siento, solo lo estoy, un desliz curioso que sonó más existencial que arrepentido. Tras la retirada de sus padres, David tomó las manos de Elaine. Ella sintió su pulso golpear contra la alianza. ¿Me crees, verdad?, preguntó. Elaine sonrió con frialdad. Creo que quieres que te crean. En la cama, contempló el techo, contando grietas como estrellas hostiles. Un golpe, una falla, pensó. Pero los terremotos rara vez confirman asistencia. En el siguiente capítulo, el suelo se desplaza, y alguien por fin dice lo indecible. No parpadees. Capítulo 3. El libro mayor de las deudas no ditas. ¿Se puede auditar un matrimonio? Cada pasada de la tarjeta cuenta una historia, algunas en moretones, otras en balances. Mira cómo los recibos sangran, ¿verdad? Elaine volvió a su trabajo de contabilidad. Una oficina donde la fotocopiadora se atascaba más a menudo de lo que la gente decía la verdad. Al menos los números obedecen cuando las reglas son claras. Generó informes YTD, pero su mente llevaba otra contabilidad: amabilidad dada, violencia recibida, disculpas adeudadas. En el almuerzo marcó una línea de ayuda cuyo jingle rondaba la radio nocturna. Una voz serena sugirió, un plan de seguridad, 2 palabras tan clínicas como estimulantes, prueba de que existían vías de escape. Elaine anotó direcciones de refugios en un post-it, lo dobló en su billetera como contrabando. Aquella noche, David propuso un fin de semana en Vermont, solo nosotros. Elaine casi rió. Él colgaba el romance como política de reembolsos. Ella contraofertó con terapia, la sonrisa de David titubeó. Los terapeutas viven de fabricar problemas, dijo, sonando inquietantemente como un anuncio de seguros. En la cena, la tensión untó cada panecillo. Frank observó el moretón, ya girasol apagado. Carraspeó. Hemos decidido prolongar nuestra visita, anunció. El tenedor de David quedó suspendido. ¿Hasta cuándo? Hasta asegurarnos de que Elaine esté a salvo, contestó Frank. La cuchara de Mildred tintineó, aplausos de porcelana para un valor largamente demorado. La silla de David chirrió. ¿Van a montar una intervención en mi propia casa? Frank sostuvo su mirada, acero gris bajo la calidez de abuelo. Llámalo mantenimiento preventivo. Resulta que el sarcasmo también le sienta bien a los ingenieros. David subió las escaleras hecho un vendaval. Elaine exhaló un siglo de tensión, agradecida pero avergonzada de esa guarnición parental. Mildred le tomó la mano. Él no puede girar esto, querida. La física está de tu lado, a toda fuerza, igual resistencia. Elaine casi rió. En su mente ajustó el libro mayor, Apoyo +1. Miedo 0.5. Cuando llegue la factura final, alguien pagará en público. Querrás primera fila. Capítulo 4. Herencia de trueno. ¿Y si el patriarcado no es una mansión sino una reliquia familiar que nadie quiere? SHH, escucha. El sótano guarda secretos más estruendosos que los puños. El sábado trajo una tormenta que parecía personal. La luz titilaba mientras los padres de Elaine ordenaban viejas fotografías a la luz de las velas. Mildred le entregó una foto sepia, su boda de 1967. En la esquina estaba el padre de Mildred, abuelo de Elaine, ojos entornados, brazos cruzados. Nunca te conté, susurró Mildred, pero él golpeaba a mi madre. Solo una vez, aseguraba. Tragó saliva. Ella le creyó. La segunda vez le reconfiguró la mandíbula. La confesión cayó más pesada que el trueno. Ecos generacionales, alineados como fichas de dominó. Arriba, David paseaba, el teléfono pegado al oído. Elaine captó fragmentos, orden de alejamiento, difamación, mi reputación. Sus palabras chisporroteaban como estática, todo evaluación de riesgos, cero remordimiento. Frank lustró sus bifocales, tic nervioso. Sabía lo de tu abuelo, dijo en voz baja. Juré que el ciclo acabaría conmigo. Elaine estudió las manos temblorosas de su padre, entendiendo que los buenos hombres pueden quedar marcados por batallas solo presenciadas. Un rayo crujió, la casa quedó a oscuras. En ese apagón, la resolución de Elaine iluminó. Ella no sería el capítulo 3 de una saga de esposas silenciadas. Buscó su maleta. David la interceptó en la escalera. Silueta recortada por relámpagos, parecía mítico, ira tallada en mármol. Irte no resuelve nada, ladró. La voz de Elaine, firme como la lluvia, ecuación equivocada. Quedarme es la variable que no puedes controlar. Pasó a su lado, el relámpago perfilando su libertad como focos de escenario. Cuando vuelva la luz, el público se quedará boquiabierto, el decorado ha cambiado para siempre. Mantente atento. Capítulo 5. Domingo de gala, miércoles de ruina. El día de Acción de Gracias llegó temprano este año, con cuchillos de trinchar y desilusiones troceadas. Todos están invitados a ver cómo la cortesía se derrite como mantequilla. Elaine eligió un lugar público para el enfrentamiento, el Salón de la Hermandad de San Andrés. Noche de comida comunitaria. Seguridad en números, testigos armados con cazuelas. Se ofreció a servir café para dar ocupación a sus manos. David llegó tarde, tensión en nudos bajo el abrigo. La congregación lo saludó con calidez ensayada, no todos leen la letra pequeña de una sonrisa. Elaine lo condujo a un aula vacía. Los fluorescentes zumbaban, banda sonora de motines de oficina y castigos de secundaria. Frank y Mildred entraron detrás, coristas en un himno de verdades duras. Voy a presentar la separación, comenzó Elaine. Los ojos de David se abrieron, menos heridos que ofendidos. ¿Por un solo error? Uno, repitió Frank, incrédulo. Un golpe no es una errata. La voz de David derivó en tono de predicador, estrés, votos matrimoniales, perdón bíblico. Elaine escuchó, luego desplegó el folleto de la línea de ayuda. Señaló la frase patrón de poder y control. Él se abalanzó, como si arrancar el papel pudiera reescribir la historia, pero Frank se interpuso. Por un segundo, David alzó la mano otra vez, reflejo o amenaza, nadie supo. El umbral se llenó de siluetas, el pastor Rogers, dos diáconos, la señora Álvarez aferrada a un pie de limón. El silencio cayó más espeso que el glaseado. El brazo de David quedó congelado en el aire, absurdamente teatral. El cuadro se grabó en la memoria congregacional. Habló el pastor Rogers, hijo, baja la mano. David obedeció, la vergüenza tiñendo su rostro. Murmuró algo sobre malentendidos, pero la sala ya había votado, incredulidad 12, credulidad 0. No llamaron a la policía, el pastor exigió que David saliera a caminar para bajar la adrenalina. Elaine, temblando, comprendió que el ostracismo público puede escocer más que las esposas metálicas. El capítulo final no trata de castigo, sino del costo de la misericordia. No te atrevas a apartar la mirada. Capítulo 6. Ecos, por fin en silencio. La redención suena distinta cuando el público ya abandonó el teatro. 3 meses después, la casa Whitlock se puso en venta, puesta en escena con arte neutro y muebles jamás usados. Elaine alquiló una cabaña artesana al otro lado de la ciudad. Hortensias azules custodiando el porche como amables porteros. Los trámites de divorcio avanzaban a paso glaciar, pero el clima emocional cambiaba a diario. Elaine asistía a terapia, aprendiendo a nombrar sentimientos más largos que las siglas corporativas. Enmarcó el post-it de la línea de ayuda, reliquia de supervivencia disfrazada de papelería. David, obligado a clases de control de ira, enviaba cartas semanales, disculpas con forma de hoja de cálculo, columnas de pesar, notas a pie de página de autocompasión. Ella leyó algunas, compostó otras. El perdón no es un cupón, caduca si se presenta demasiado. Frank y Mildred regresaron a Ohio, pero antes Frank le entregó un juego de llaves inglesas. Por si gotea el fregadero, dijo. Traducción, ahora puedes arreglar cosas. Un domingo suave de lluvia, Elaine celebró su primera cena en solitario. Se quemó el borde de la cazuela, aroma liberador de imperfección. Alrededor de su mesa se sentaron nuevos amigos del grupo terapéutico, gente fluida en la reconstrucción. Brindaron con agua con gas por los dolores de cabeza evitados y los futuros sin trazar. Elaine alzó su vaso, por elegir dónde termina el eco. Afuera, el viento jugueteaba con las hortensias, pero la casa resistía, firme y honesta. Si sentiste aflojarse ese nudo en el pecho, comparte esta historia. Alguien que conoces puede seguir contando las grietas de su techo.
Chapter 1. A card laced with last year's poison. What if your life is a showroom, and behind the glass everything's already collapsed? Helen just wanted to surprise her husband for his birthday, but instead of gratitude, she found something that turned 25 years of marriage upside down. The kitchen smelled like lemon pie. Not the gluten-free trend nonsense. The real thing. Rich, buttery, with cinnamon and cream. The kind Mark used to call the taste of home. Helen wiped her hands on her apron, the one with the embroidered rooster, and rehearsed in her mind how she'd wish him happy birthday. 50 already, you sly old fox? Maybe with a giggle, or maybe just a kiss before the kids woke up. There was a stack of envelopes on the table. Cards from coworkers, his parents, a cousin. But one stood out. Too thin, no stamp, no return address. Just a name. Mark. Helen wasn't the type to snoop, but this envelope, something about it felt wrong. Like gas in the air. Faint, but enough to make you check the stove. She opened it, quietly, as if paper could scream. Happy birthday, my love. Every year is a gift. Every look from you. A communion. Thank you for still choosing me, despite everything. Signed, N. No surname. No hints. Just that disgusting, still choosing me. And in that moment, between the kettle's hiss and the cinnamon-sweet air, Helen realized, this letter wasn't from her. Wasn't for her. And it never should have ended up in her home. 3 sharp knocks. The kids were awake. Their daughter slammed her door. The son mumbled in the bathroom. And Helen stood frozen in the kitchen, gripping the card like a weapon. It wasn't just paper. It was a vault, a lie wrapped in tenderness. She slipped the letter back into the envelope, tucked it into her apron pocket and smiled. As if nothing had happened. As if life hadn't just cracked down the middle. Morning, she said, walking into the living room. Mark was pulling on a sweater, cheeks rosy from the shower. He looked, as always, solid, soft, a little unshaven. And suddenly, a stranger. Hey, babe, smells like pie, he said, kissing her temple. Right where that traitorous thought pulsed. Who the hell is N? The whole day passed under a rhythm of fake smiles. The son gave him a homemade card with a drawing of their cottage. The daughter mumbled something about cake. Mark was attentive, nearly perfect. And that infuriated Helen even more. Because perfect is how you hide things. After dinner, when the house was quiet, she pulled the letter back out. The paper smelled like someone else's perfume. Light and dry, lavender and something sharp, like a stubborn woman. She went to Mark's office. The key was, as always, under the fake orchid vase. Everything was where it should be. Tax files, document boxes, family photos. But in the bottom drawer, another envelope. Same handwriting, same N. Helen didn't open it. She just sat holding it, and what she felt wasn't pain, it was resentment. Deep, sticky, like cold porridge from childhood. In the morning, she looked flawless, and breakfast looked like an ad. Eggs Benedict, foamy coffee, fresh strawberries. Mark sat down, reaching for his cup. You get letters from someone named N? She asked, like discussing the weather. He froze. The tiniest pause. But a pause. What? Who's N? Too fast. Just curious. Very poetic woman. Smells of lavender, by the way. Mark stared at her, and for the first time in years, something flickered in his eyes. Fear, guilt, or just annoyance. You were snooping? I was looking for candles, and I found a lie. What happened next changed everything. You don't want to miss how this unravels. Chapter 2, The Crack Inside the Mirror. This is the turning point. Everything you've been waiting for? It's right here. Mark made a mistake. Helen connected the dots. And then, something no one in this family expected. Mark wasn't an idiot. He didn't deny it. He looked at Helen like he was trying to remember where exactly in their marriage he'd lost the right to compassion. It's just an old friend. From the past, his voice calm, almost sincere, like someone who practiced lying in the mirror. Helen sighed, not because she believed him, but because there was a tiredness buried in that phrase, the kind that lingers in long marriages. I'm too tired to explain, because you won't believe me anyway. And normally, she might have let it slide, if not for 2 things. 1, the perfume on the letter. 2, the words, you still choose me, not something a woman says about the past. You know, Helen said quietly, pushing her coffee aside, I can endure a lot, But not stupidity. Don't turn me into one of those women from bad soap operas. I deserve at least a dignified betrayal. 2 hours later, she had cleaned every window in the house. That was how she coped with disaster. She washed windows when her mother died, when her daughter had a meltdown in school, when Mark once disappeared for 3 days on a business trip. But this time, as she scrubbed glass to a squeak, something new bloomed inside her. Not anger, readiness. She began observing. No, she didn't check his phone. That's for the desperate. Helen was the kind who waits to catch you red-handed, not sniff your trail. But she noticed how Mark suddenly started working late, how he turned off screens when she entered the room, how he stopped drinking coffee after dinner, even though he always did. Then one Saturday he said, "I'm going to the store. Need motor oil." Helen nodded. 20 minutes later, she left too. Not because she doubted him, because she needed to know, for sure. Mark's silver Mazda sat in the lot of a quiet cafe on the outskirts of town, the kind they used to visit back in 2004, when her hair was still long and she still believed in second honeymoons. Through the window she saw him. He was sitting across from a woman in a blue coat, beautiful, not young, but with a smirk no one wears on accident. Helen stayed in her car and just watched. At one point, the woman placed her hand on Mark's. He didn't pull away. This wasn't sex. It wasn't a romantic picnic. It was intimacy between two people who had decided that the rest of the world no longer mattered. That evening, Helen lit candles, made the truffle pasta he loved. Mark came home with flowers, a belated apology wrapped in roses. "You deserve the best," he said, kissing her forehead. "I thought so too," Helen replied with a soft smile. "By the way, do you mind if I visit my sister this weekend?" "Of course, you should rest." He didn't even ask why, which told her everything she needed to know. She didn't visit her so. Chapter 3. The Son Who Knew Too Much. Grown-up secrets rarely stay locked in grown-up closets. When Helen's son decided to tell the truth, he had no idea he'd destroyed 2 lives at once, and possibly not just his parents. He was 18, that age when you still believe that truth is always a heroic thing, and haven't yet learned that sometimes silence saves more than it hurts. He held a flash drive, black, like a bad omen, and his face, not angry, not confused, just disappointed. The way kids look when they finally realize that moms aren't just moms. They're women who can be humiliated. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for vacation photos. And then I found a folder. Documents 2019. He hesitated. "Just show me," Helen said. She wasn't afraid anymore. Because what could be worse? The screen lit up. Emails, dozens of them. Years old. Mark and someone named Nancy H. had been writing each other every day, sometimes 3-4 times a day. Some messages had photos. Others, bank statements. They weren't just talking about feelings. They were talking about money. An old apartment, the one Helen thought was jointly owned, wiring money to a personal account. "Sent the 5K as you asked. If all goes well, in 6 months we can close her part and begin the new one." Her part, that meant Helen. Her life, a spreadsheet being quietly cleared out. She shut the screen, slowly, as if truth was something that needed to be handled with gloves. "You knew?" she asked her son. Number not until today. "Does your sister?" "I don't think so. If she did, she'd have either told you or burned the house down." Helen smirked. Her daughter definitely inherited her fire. That night she didn't sleep, not from pain, from a new, razor-sharp thought. She had spent too long in a polite hell, a marriage without yelling, no broken dishes, everything for the kids. But the kids were grown now, and a polite hell is still hell. The next morning, Helen woke her daughter. Grumbling, she came to the kitchen, half asleep. They sat with coffee. "We're having a family dinner tonight," Helen said. "Is this about pie again?" Number. This time it's about the truth. At 7 p.m., the whole family sat at the table. Salad, pasta, baked fish. Helen wore pearls. Not for beauty, for power. In their household, pearls meant Mom wasn't joking. Mark acted calm, like a man unaware the script had been rewritten. "I think we have unfinished business from your birthday," Helen said casually, "and I'm not fond of unfinished." The kids exchanged glances. Mark raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "I mean that ever since you started financing your old girlfriend, I've been wondering, were you planning a new life with her, or just slowly dismantling mine?" Silence, dead and heavy, like the pause before a shot in a movie. "You read my emails?" Mark asked. "I'm reading my own life, out loud, because someone's been rewriting it without my consent. You're misunderstanding." "Oh, and how exactly should one interpret close her part and begin the new one?" Their daughter stood up. "What the hell is going on?" The son stayed silent. He already knew. Mark tried to speak, to explain, to justify, but his voice trembled, and Helen sat motionless. Not from shock, but from the calm of a woman who has forgiven too much and is done. "I don't want to destroy this family," Mark said. "Mark, this family is me and the kids. You were just an attachment with an expiration date." That night, he slept on the couch. The next, at a hotel. 3 days later, at Nancy's. Yes, Helen knew. Her son had spotted their car. Same cafe parking lot, this time with suitcases. But what Helen didn't know was, this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something far darker. Chapter 4. Nancy wasn't the real problem. Helen thought she'd uncovered the biggest betrayal of her life, but when she opened an old box of documents, she realized Mark wasn't the only one who'd deceived her. A week had passed. The house without Mark felt strange, not empty, more like exposed, like a room stripped bare after someone finally opened all the windows and let the dust fly out. The kids had scattered. Her daughter went back to university. Her son hung out with friends, though he kept watching her like someone waiting for an earthquake after the tremor. And that unnerved Helen more than anything. She wasn't one to ask for help. She apologized to her therapist when she cried, "For God's sake." But one evening she went to the attic. There, under an old floral blanket, was a box labeled, "Old Stuff, 1996 முதல் 2004 வரை." She'd been meaning to throw it out for years, never had the guts. Inside, letters, documents, kids' drawings, cooking magazines, bits of her life, and one envelope. Brown, no stamp, just a message in her mother's handwriting. "Do not open, unless you really want the truth." Helen sat on the floor. Her heart beat like it wanted out. Her hands trembled. She hadn't seen her mother in 10 years. Well, she'd seen her, in a casket. The woman had died with her secrets, with that same cold face, like she'd taken someone else's confession with her. Helen opened the letter. "If you're reading this, then the truth has come out. I never wanted you to know, but you're a grown woman now, and you deserve to know. Mark wasn't the first to betray you. I was." Helen froze. Her mom? Her mom, the letter continued. "You never understood why your father left. You were too little. I told you he abandoned us. That was a lie. He left because I had an affair. And you, Helen, you're not his daughter." The room spun. Her chest tightened, like someone had placed a cinder block on it. She dropped the letter. It landed gently, like it was carrying not words, but a curse. She sat there for 2 hours, unmoving, then went to the bathroom and washed her hands 3 times, as if she could scrub off generations of lies. Then she called her brother, the one she barely spoke to. "You knew?" she asked. Silence. Then, "Mom told me when I was 20. I thought you knew too. Helen, I'm sorry." "Sorry? Sorry?" Helen stared in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman looking back. A woman who'd held her marriage together for 25 years for the sake of children who may not have known the full truth about themselves. A woman who had forgiven her cold mother, never knowing that the frost had been hiding a corpse of a secret. Late that night, she called her daughter. "We need to talk. Come home this weekend." "What happened?" her daughter asked. Something that happened 40 years ago. I just found out about it today. By Friday, the whole family was gathered again, without Mark. He had become a shadow no one missed. The son and daughter sat at the table like it was a school conference. But this time, Helen was the principal, and she had a verdict in hand. She told them everything. About the letter, about her mother, about her father. Her son cursed under his breath. Her daughter cried. Helen sat calm, not cold, just tired. My whole life, she said, I was building a house on a foundation of lies. Now I have one question. Do we tear it down and rebuild, or board it up and pretend nobody ever lived here? Silence. Then her daughter said, if we don't tear it down, it'll collapse on us. I want to know everything. Her son nodded, and in that moment Helen realized the truth didn't kill the family, it finally set it free. But this still wasn't the end, because Mark had one final card to play. Chapter 5. What was left after the storm. When a man falls, he grabs for whatever's nearby, sometimes to rise, sometimes to drag others down with him. Mark came back, but not for forgiveness. Helen stood in the garden. The apple trees trembled in the wind, as if whispering, let it go, don't touch it, rot falls off on its own. She was watering the mint when she heard tires crunching gravel, the silver Mazda. Mark, no flowers, no cake, no shame. He stepped out in his court coat, the one he wore only when things got ugly. He carried a folder. You didn't think we'd be hugging on the lawn, did you? Helen said, not turning around. He came closer. I'm here with a deal. A deal? His voice was flat, like a banker. I don't want a war. We can settle this quietly. You keep the house, the car, half the savings. Just one condition. Helen didn't blink. What is it? Don't tell the kids, especially about your mother's letter. Let them keep a clear story. I'm the villain. You're the victim. Everyone's comfortable. She laughed, not loudly, but like someone who just survived an earthquake. And then spotted a mouse. You really think you get to make demands after hiding 25 years of betrayal like mothballs in a closet? I just don't want more pain, he said, for once unsure. You already gave us pain, she said. What's left is healing. She didn't sign. She burned the papers in the yard. Ashes floated onto the mint. Deal's off, she said, but the truth stays. A month later, the divorce was official. No scandal, but not exactly silent either. Neighbors gossiped. People at church whispered. Her daughter transferred to a closer university. Her son started seeing a girl whose mom had also survived a divorce. They spent evenings together, cooking, talking, dusting off board games that hadn't seen daylight since 2002. Helen bought herself a new apron. No rooster this time. And every morning she began a ritual, writing a letter. To herself, no signature, no lies, just truth. Little by little. Day by day. One evening her daughter approached her. Mom, I just wanted to say something. You probably think this whole thing made us weaker. But honestly, this is the first time I've seen the real you. And I'm proud of you. Not because you were strong, but because you finally stopped being polite. The past didn't disappear. It stayed, like a scar. But now it wasn't a wound. It was a reminder. Pain isn't the end. It's the signal something needs fixing. There was a letter in the mailbox, from Nancy, a card. Just one line. You can hate me, but I'm grateful to you, because now he's finally your ex. Helen smirked. She tore up the card, went inside, baked a pie, for no reason, just because this time, the life she was living was hers, entirely hers.
My name is Susan Wagner. All my life I thought I knew who I was. A daughter to 2 loving parents, a sister, a wife. Just an ordinary woman with a few habits and a drawer full of old letters I never opened. But then, I opened that drawer. And I realized my whole life was a carefully folded lie. You want the truth? So did I. Just don't make the mistake of thinking it sets you free. It turns everything upside down. And now if you're ready, I'll tell you what happened. And why I can never look at a garden, a mailbox, or the word family the same way again. The drawer she shouldn't have opened. What if everything you believed about your childhood was a lie? Susan only wanted to find the spare batteries. Instead, she found the end of her entire reality. Susan Wagner didn't mean to snoop. She needed AA batteries. The TV remote was dead and Frank, her husband, was already snoring on the couch like he was auditioning for a sleep apnea commercial. The drawer in her late mother's old dresser had always been a mess of takeout menus, rubber bands, and God only knew what else. But this time, nestled under a tattered booklet for a 1993 microwave, she saw a stack of envelopes. Old, yellowed, fragile, but too carefully bundled to be junk. Her hand paused, just for a second. Then again, since when did batteries come tied with silk ribbon? She sat on the edge of the bed. The letters were addressed to L. Wagner, her mother Louise. But the return address wasn't Dad's. It wasn't even familiar. Who the hell was C. Barrows from Oakland? Susan opened the first envelope. Louise, I'm still not over the night in Santa Cruz. You said it was a mistake, but I can't believe a mistake could feel that real. That right? She read it 3 times. Each time her mouth got drier. By the 4th line, she felt like she'd swallowed sandpaper. A mistake? Santa Cruz? 1982? Susan was born in 1983. A bitter laugh escaped her. It sounded foreign in her quiet childhood room, now sterilized by estate sale leftovers and the faint scent of lavender sachets her mother had hoarded like gold. It had only been a month since her mother died. They'd buried her in a green silk dress, the one Dad loved. Susan had insisted. Now she wasn't sure Dad ever saw her in it. Susan closed the drawer, then opened it again, pulled every letter. All 16. She laid them out like a forensic analyst. Years covered: 1981 to 1985. Tone: romantic, apologetic, obsessive. Content: frequent references to the girl. Never a name. Just the girl. Her. Couldn't be. Susan blinked and looked toward the mirror. Same wide-set eyes as her mother, sure. But that didn't prove anything. The Wagners were all broad-faced and brown-eyed. No one ever questioned her bloodline before. Until now. The next morning, Susan confronted her brother Daniel. He was halfway through a bagel and local news when she slammed a letter in front of him like a detective in a crime show. He read. He stopped chewing. "Is this a joke?" he asked, not laughing. "You tell me." "Mom." "She would never." "I found 16 of these," Susan hissed. "Do you want to read the one where she says, 'You would have been a better father than he ever was'?" Daniel looked pale. He set the bagel down. "You think Dad knew?" Susan shook her head slowly. "I think we didn't know a damn thing." That night, alone in the kitchen, Susan poured tea she wouldn't drink and stared at the stack of letters. She could feel something shifting beneath her skin. A slow seeping unraveling. Not anger. Not yet. Just the realization that her entire identity had a hole. And her mother had stitched over it with silence. She thought the truth ended with the letters. But what she was about to find next would make those look like bedtime stories. The photo she never meant to see. You think old photographs are harmless? Susan opened a dusty album, and the face staring back at her wasn't her father. At least, not the one who raised her. Susan couldn't sleep. The letters were stacked in a Ziploc bag now. A poor attempt at containment. As if plastic could stop the damage they'd already done. At dawn, she did the one thing she swore she wouldn't. Went back to the house. Their family home was supposed to be on the market. Realtor signs out front, staged furniture inside, neutral as a hotel room. But Susan still had the key, and muscle memory overruled grief. She walked barefoot across the creaky floors like she used to when sneaking peanut butter by the spoonful at midnight. The attic was still untouched. No one had touched that stuff since Dad died 3 years ago. Mom couldn't bear to, and Susan hadn't dared. Now it was time. The cardboard box was labeled Christmas Decor, 1985 to 1990. But inside, tangled between a plastic reindeer and some tinsel, was an old photo album. Susan wiped the cover with her sleeve. Black leather fraying at the corners. Heavy. The first pages were standard fare. Baby Susan in a ducky towel, Daniel with a bowl cut and no front teeth. Mom and Dad smiling in front of the old Buick. Beer in hand, sunburns on cheeks. And then page 7. Santa Cruz, 1982. The year before she was born. A candid photo. Her mother, unmistakable, laughing in the surf, hair plastered to her cheeks. And beside her, arm looped around her waist. Not Dad. This man was taller, darker skin, strong jaw, thick brows. His hand rested just under Louise's ribs like it belonged there. His name was written in fading pen beneath the photo. Lou plus Caleb that weekend. Susan stared at the name like it might blink. Caleb. T. Barrows. The return address. The letters. So that's what she'd been to him, not Louise but Lou intimate. Real. She tore the photo from the page. Behind it, tucked carefully, was a receipt from a motel in Santa Cruz. Room 204. 2 nights. Paid in cash. There was even a doodle of a heart on the back. Susan let out a sharp breath. Laughed bitterly. Her mother had saved all of it. The woman who ironed her napkins and never allowed more than one brand of mayo in the house had kept evidence of an affair like it was a damn souvenir. When she returned home, Frank was sitting in front of the TV again, chewing popcorn like it was a job. She said nothing. Just walked past him with the photo in one hand and her own heartbeat in the other. She Googled the name Caleb Barrows. First hit obituary. Died in 2016. Oakland native. Civil rights attorney. Survived by wife, 2 sons. She clicked on an old photo embedded in a 2009 interview. Her stomach twisted. The man was older, yes. Gray in the beard. But the same face. Same jawline. And the younger son. She clicked again. Enlarged the image. His name was Marcus Barrows. Born 1983. The same year as her. Susan called Daniel. I need you to come over, she said. Why? Because I think I just found my twin. They sat in stunned silence, the photo between them like a crime scene clue. But Mom would have told us, Daniel finally said. Would she? Because she didn't tell us about 16 love letters, or motel receipts, or that she had a relationship with someone who wasn't Dad. Daniel shook his head. This is crazy. Susan nodded slowly. And yet here we are. They agreed to keep it quiet. For now. Test the waters. Maybe it was all coincidence. Susan didn't believe that. Not for a second. That night she emailed Marcus Barrows. Hi Marcus. I came across your father's obituary while researching my family's history. I believe our parents may have known each other. Would you be open to talking? She hovered over send. Then clicked. He replied within hours. But what he said wasn't just unexpected. It ripped open everything she thought she was prepared to handle. He looked just like her. You think you're ready to meet the man who might be your brother? Susan thought so too, until he opened the door. And what he said before she even spoke left her speechless. The reply came at 3:12 a.m. Hi Susan. This is unexpected but not entirely unfamiliar. My mother once mentioned a woman named Louise. Let's meet. I have questions too. Signed simply, Marcus. Susan reread it under the dim glow of the fridge light. The milk expired last week, but that was the least of her concerns. She set it back inside like it might explode. They met in Oakland. A small coffee shop with iron chairs and dry muffins. Marcus was already there, standing near the window. And when he turned, it hit her like a freight train. The same eyebrows. The same slightly too flat nose. The same "are you kidding me" squint she gave Frank at least twice a week. Marcus stared too. "You look," he started. Susan raised an eyebrow. "Like your father?" He laughed. "Short. Dry. Yeah. That." They sat. The conversation was cautious, controlled, like two diplomats with explosives taped to their backs. "So," Marcus said, "what exactly did you find?" Susan slid one letter across the table. "Just one." He read, blinked slowly. "My dad wasn't perfect," he said. "But he wasn't a liar. If this happened, he hid it from all of us too." "Do you have a birth certificate?" she asked. "I do. And I looked at it this morning. My mom got pregnant in March of '83. She said it was a miracle." Susan exhaled through her teeth. "Same month." They didn't say the word. "Not yet." Sibling. It felt radioactive. She got home to find Frank holding the same letter. "What the hell is this?" he asked, waving it like it owed him money. "Why were you going through my things? Why are you hiding love letters to your mother from a man who isn't your father?" Susan yanked it from his hand. "Because I didn't have a name for the storm I'm standing in, and I didn't need yours added to the forecast." Frank opened his mouth, closed it. He looked not angry. Something worse. Hurt. "You always said your family was boring," he said quietly. She smiled bitterly. "Turns out I was the only boring part." The next day Daniel called. "I did it," he said. "DNA kit. Express shipping." Susan sighed. "You sure? I need to know if I've been calling someone sister for 40 years who isn't." That cut deep. But she understood. She ordered one too. Weeks passed. Susan met Marcus again, once at a park, once at a diner. Their conversations deepened. Music, childhood injuries, weird food preferences. At one point they laughed at the same dark joke at the exact same time and froze. It was eerie. It was also comforting. Marcus brought up one last thing. "My mom, she had this journal. Locked drawer. I always assumed it was full of therapy stuff. Still have it." He nodded. Next day he handed it to her. Susan stayed up all night reading it. Louise appeared throughout, always as Elle, always with a tone of longing, of regret, of what. One entry, dated May 1983, punched her square in the soul. "He wanted me to keep her. Said we could raise her together. But I couldn't burn down my whole life. Not for love. Not again. I told him the girl would never know he existed. He cried harder than I've ever seen a man cry. I left that night and never answered his letters again." Susan's breath caught. She was the girl. She took the journal to Daniel. He read it in silence. The whole time his mouth was tight, fingers clenched on his knees. "Say something," Susan whispered. He looked up. "You're my sister." Relief poured through her like warm water. "But Mom lied to both of us." That part stayed cold. The DNA results were still days away. But what the tests would confirm would make them question everything all over again. The father she never knew had a secret of his own. You think one parent lying is bad? Susan believed her father had been the innocent one. Then she opened his safe and realized this rabbit hole had no bottom. The DNA results came in on a Tuesday. Gray skies, heavy air. The kind of day that warned you not to expect good news. Susan opened hers first. 99.8% match with Marcus Barrows. Half-sibling. Shared paternity. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stared at the screen like it was a foreign language. Daniel called 5 minutes later. "I'm not your brother," he said flatly. Susan closed her eyes. "I know." Silence. Then Daniel, in a voice that sounded like rust. "I wish I didn't." She expected grief. Or anger. What she didn't expect was guilt. She had taken something from Daniel, or at least shattered the illusion of what he thought he had. "Dad knew," he said finally. "He must have." Mom kept this journal, these letters, that damn motel receipt. She didn't bury it deep. She kept it like a memory box. Susan hesitated. What if he did know? Daniel scoffed. And just raised you like nothing happened? Susan looked away. People do strange things for love. Or denial. 2 nights later, Susan returned to the house. The locks hadn't been changed yet. She walked straight to the master bedroom closet. She remembered the floorboard. Her dad used to keep cash there for emergencies, a habit from his military days. But as she lifted the board, she saw something else. A small metal safe. Combination lock. She knew it. 1969, the year they married. Clicked open. Inside, a stack of letters. Not from Caleb. Not to her mother. To her. Dear Susan, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And I'm sorry you're finding out like this. I wasn't your biological father, but you were my daughter every damn day you were mine. Her knees gave out. I knew. I always knew. Your mother told me when you were 3. She begged me to let it go. Said it would ruin everything. She was right. It would have. But I loved you more than I loved my own pride. Tears came hot and fast. I watched you grow, fall, fail, rise. I saw your first steps, heard your first swear word, drove you to that awful prom. You were mine in every way that counted. But I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I was weak. I just didn't want to lose what I had. No signature. Just Dad. She stayed in that closet for hours. Somewhere between betrayal and grace, she felt something crack. And not in a bad way. This man had lied. But this man had chosen her. And now that truth lived in her chest like a second heartbeat. Susan shared the letter with Daniel. He read it twice, expression unreadable. I still don't get to be your brother, he said finally. Susan took his hand. But you were. You always will be. She thought that was the end of it. The letters. The DNA. The journal. The safe. But grief has layers. And the past has claws. Because when Marcus called again, his voice was shaking. There's something you need to see, he said. I got access to my dad's safe deposit box. Susan's stomach dropped. What's in it? A pause. A photo. Of you. Maybe 6 years old. And a note taped to the back. She whispered. What does it say? Marcus inhaled sharply. She doesn't know. But I do. One day she will. And I hope she'll forgive me. What Susan learns next will force her to confront a truth even deeper than blood. And this time someone else has been lying too. Truth isn't always freedom. Everyone wants the truth until they get it. Susan thought she'd uncovered all the lies. But the last confession came from the one person she never expected. The photo was unmistakable. Susan, age 6, standing in her mother's garden. Tangled hair, pink overalls, arms clutching a plastic watering can. She remembered that summer. The wasp sting, the orange popsicles, the way her mother called her sweet pea, and hummed Patsy Cline at dusk. But the man who kept this photo wasn't her father. And yet he kept it for decades. Marcus sat across from her at the kitchen table, the photo and note between them. I don't understand, he said softly. Why would our dad keep this if he never contacted you? Susan didn't answer immediately. Instead, she ran a finger over the edge of the photo. I think he was waiting, she finally said. For something. Or someone. 3 weeks later, Marcus's mother agreed to meet her. They sat in the garden behind a pale blue house in Fremont, where birds chirped like nothing had ever gone wrong. Marcus stood off to the side, arms crossed, protective. His mother, Gloria, was composed but pale, like a storm cloud that hadn't yet decided whether to break. I knew about you, Gloria said without preamble. I knew there might be another child. Susan blinked. I found a letter he wrote but never sent. It said Louise had cut off contact. That he thought the child was a girl, but she'd never know about him. You didn't tell him to find me? Susan asked. Gloria's eyes flicked toward Marcus. I told him to respect her choice. And I told him I wouldn't compete with the ghost. Susan inhaled sharply. I wasn't a ghost. No. But you were a scar. And I had to choose whether to pick at it. It was cruel. It was honest. It was human. That night, Susan stood alone in her old family backyard. The lilacs were blooming. Her mother's favorite. She sat on the cracked bench beneath the tree where her father used to hang wind chimes. The wind picked up. The chimes were gone. But she still heard them. In her head. In her memory. She closed her eyes and let the silence stretch. By the end of the summer, the house was sold. Daniel moved to Chicago with his new job. They stayed in touch, awkwardly at first, then better. Siblings, not by blood but by habit. That counted too. Frank and Susan separated quietly. No yelling. Just a slow fade of warmth. He took the recliner. She kept the coffee maker. Marcus became a fixture. Not a brother, not exactly. But a constant. A mirror. A reminder that families don't just break. They bend, reshape, evolve. And sometimes they forgive. Susan never framed the photo. But she kept it in her drawer under the batteries. Just in case she ever forgot where she came from. Before closing the final box, Susan found one last letter. It was unsigned, undated, and typewritten. The truth doesn't set you free. It gives you something new to carry. She folded it and slipped it in her coat pocket, then closed the door behind her.
My aunt poisoned my mom, so I made her sign her own confession. Chapter 1. What if the people smiling at your dinner table are slowly killing your mother, and you stayed silent for too long? Until one day you decided to play by their rules. It started with a cough. Not just a cold, but that deep, gut-rattling kind that echoes through the walls. At night at first, then during the day, then constantly. The doctors found nothing. Lungs clear, blood work fine. And yet she was getting weaker, slower, quieter, eating less. And Aunt Lena started visiting more. I brought her some soup. You work too much to feed her properly, she said sweetly, placing a pot on the stove like she was Mother Teresa in an apron. But I knew better. Lena wasn't feeding my mom. She was feeding a plan. Watching, measuring, waiting. This apartment was all we had. Dad died when I was 15. Mom was the sole owner. She always told me, when I'm gone, it's all yours. Just don't let Lena in. She looks soft, but there's a snake behind her eyes. I used to think she was exaggerating. Now I prayed I'd listen sooner. Lena's meals became regular. So did Mom's weakness. I started refusing the food. Oh, I'm on a new diet, I'd lie. Thanks, though, she smiled. Your mother needs nutrition. She's not getting any younger. One night, I switched our teacups. She drank mine. I drank hers. 2 hours later, I was shaking, cold, and drenched in sweat. R said, maybe stress. I knew better. She was poisoning her. Slowly, carefully, like an artist. I had two options, go to the cops, or play a longer game. I chose the second, not for revenge, for justice. And it started with trust. Chapter 2. He knew she was killing his mother, drop by drop. But instead of anger, he gave her trust. Because the most dangerous poison isn't in a cup. It's in a smile. I stopped arguing. Thank you for helping, Aunt Lena? I'd say warmly, watching her fall into the trap. She started suggesting ideas. You know, it might be time to transfer the place to your name, while your mother's still with it. I nodded. That's actually smart. I've been thinking about the future. Her eyes lit up. She smelled blood. She showed up with papers 3 days later. A simple power of attorney. Just a signature. It'll make everything easier when... Well, you know, I hid a recorder under the table. Another in the jewelry box. I started taping everything. Her voice, her vitamins, her heart drops. None of which were prescribed. One day, I brought her tea with a tiny pinch of the same mixture she'd given my mom. Enough to rattle, not kill. Within an hour, She was pale and sweating. What did you give me?" she gasped. "Dimedrol and barbiturates. Sound familiar?" She stood up, trembling. "You're insane." "No, Auntie. I just learned from the best." I played her the recordings. She sat down, stunned. "You won't get away with this." "Oh, I already have. And now, so have you." Chapter 3. She thought she had him fooled. But the moment her hand touched that pen, the trap snapped shut. She vanished for 2 weeks. Mom started eating again. Her voice got stronger. She even laughed once. Then a phone call. "I need to stop by. Just half an hour." "For what?" "Old documents. Something important." She arrived dressed like a widow on a budget, cheap coat, smeared makeup, plastic folder in hand. "I thought it over," she said. "I don't want to fight. I just want to leave things clean." She placed a set of papers on the table. "I transferred the apartment rights. All of it. I'm out." I looked her in the eye, then handed her a pen. "There's just one more thing. Sign here. Just a form acknowledging your statements." She didn't read it. She signed. I pressed a button under the table. A tiny red light blinked. The lawyer walked in. A friend. Trusted. Watching the whole thing. "Thanks," he said. "That's all I needed." She froze, then exploded. "You tricked me." "No. I let you speak freely." Chapter 4. She was gone. He thought it was over. But the real poison wasn't in her. It was what she left behind. A week passed. Silence. Peace. Then the knock. It was her. No makeup. Old coat. A file in her hands. "I'm not here to fight," she said. "I came to give you something." She handed over old letters from my mom. "She wrote about you. Said you were smart but soft. She called me greedy." She paused. She was right. Then another folder. "I had my share officially transferred to you. You win. I'm out." I didn't speak. Neither did Mom. Lena cried. "I'm alone." That's all this was. Fear. Of being nothing. She left without waiting for forgiveness. Mom looked at me. "Don't let her bitterness become yours," she said. "That's how poison survives." Chapter 5. Some enemies disappear. Others stay buried in your own heart. He had one. But now he had to choose who he wanted to be. Mom healed. Slowly. I cooked dinner. She smiled. But I was stuck. I set the trap. Caught the monster. Saved my mother. And I still felt dirty. Every night I replayed it. The fake smiles, the lies, the moment I enjoyed watching her panic. Did I become her? I asked. Mom didn't hesitate. "No. You protected. You didn't destroy." Then a letter. From Lena. "You were right. I poisoned her. I hated that you had a family and I didn't. I had nothing, so I wanted to take everything. Now I see who I became. Thank you for showing me the mirror." I folded it. Placed it in a box with Mom's old letters. We never spoke of it again. Sunday. Cooked lunch. Real food. No poison. No fear. Mom said, "It smells like the past, but calmer." I smiled. "Because no one's trying to kill us anymore." She touched my hand. "You're not cruel. You're just finally grown." I looked out the window, and for the first time I felt free.
My name's Agatha. I'm 50-something, married to a man with a beer belly, got a son who calls twice a month, and a cat who clearly thinks she owns the place. I live quiet. No drama, no fireworks. Dinner goes on the stove at 6:01 sharp, because 6 o'clock is for control freaks and 6:05 is just disrespectful. Everything else? Normal life. Until one day it wasn't. It all started with the damn cat. Mila saw a squirrel and bolted over the fence straight into the yard of those weird new neighbors. The ones who never waved, never spoke, and kept their windows blacked out. I went looking for her. But instead of a cat, I found my sister, Lena, the sister we buried 20 years ago. Funeral, closed casket, family photos, grief so thick you could choke on it. And there she was, sitting on some stranger's couch, wrapped in a filthy blanket, looking at me like I'd just dropped by for coffee. She said, "I'm sorry." "Sorry? For what, 20 years of silence? For watching our mother die thinking her youngest daughter burned to death on a bus? I wanted to scream, walk away, slap her across the face. But instead, I sat down. Because sisters, they're not about reason. They're about the scars that never really heal. And if you think things got clearer after that? Oh honey, that's when it all really started. Because someone had followed her. And what followed her wasn't finished. So sit down. Buckle up. This isn't a story about forgiveness. It's a story about the truth. And the truth never shows up quietly. Chapter 1. They followed the cat and found a door that they should never have opened. No one was prepared for what the strange house concealed. At first, everything seemed almost charming. Almost. Mila, where are you? Agatha called out, leaning out from the porch. In the background was a bald front yard, a peeling bench, and her husband Frank fiddling with the wiring of the lawnmower, which, judging by its appearance, he had been trying to fix for 3 years. Mila, a fluffy creature with the temperament of a pit bull, ran off after a squirrel. And the squirrel ran over the fence to the neighbors. Unusual neighbors. The ones who had moved in a couple of months ago, buying the house from Mrs. Harris, who was always baking stinky pumpkin muffins and yelling at the children for breathing under her window. Honey, leave the cat alone. We'll find it. Frank grumbled, not taking his eyes off the nut he was arguing with more than his own wife. That cat is worth more than your truck. Agatha snapped. And unlike you, it has character. She walked around the fence. The house was strangely quiet, as if no one lived there, although she had clearly seen a light in the window at night. And a shadow. Tall. Female. Behind the house was a broken-up plot of land, littered with trash. The cat was gone somewhere there. Agatha pushed the back gate and raised her eyebrows in surprise. The lock was broken. Had someone broken in? Or had they forgotten to lock it? Mila, she called again. Come on, get out or I'll call Frank and he'll whine for 3 days. The cat didn't respond. Agatha went inside. The grass crunched under her feet, as if no one had walked here in a long time. The windows were covered with paper. The door to the porch was ajar. Cold air flowed from inside, smelling of dampness, tobacco, and something metallic. She stepped inside. Mila, don't joke like that. She exhaled, peering into the semi-darkness. And then she heard a voice. A woman's voice. Hoarse. Agatha. Her head spun. She knew that voice. She knew it to the point of trembling. He should have died 20 years ago. She turned around and saw her, sitting on an old sofa, surrounded by junk and dust. Lena, her younger sister, the one who had disappeared, buried, burned in a bus in 2002. At least that's what the police report said. You. Agatha couldn't finish. The words fell apart. I'm sorry, Lena said, and she looked as if it were all normal. As if 20 years of disappearance were just an oops, it happens to everyone. Agatha leaned against the wall. Her heart was pounding. There was a lump in her throat. Who the hell are you? She barked. A ghost? A joke? What's going on? Lena was silent. Only tears ran down her cheeks. Real ones. Salty ones. Alive ones. Agatha didn't notice Frank approaching. Where have you been? He began. Then he saw her. Holy shit. Is that Lena? Yes, she said. It's me. And then for the first time in 20 years, Agatha regretted ever going to look for that cat. End of chapter 1. What happened next changed everything. You won't want to miss how it unfolds. Chapter 2. She came back from the dead. And then she started acting as if nothing had happened. But if you've been hiding for 20 years, it means you have something to run from. Agatha was silent for a long time. She wasn't usually the silent type. She usually had a response for every situation, sharp, caustic, sometimes with a hint of old brandy, even if there was tea in her glass. But now, Her sister sat on the sofa, wrapped in a blanket with an owl pattern. The kind they used to sell in cheap corner stores that always smelled of chicken and rotten batteries. "Lena," Agatha finally managed to say. "You died. You died on the bus. We had a damn coffin. Earth. Flowers. Cried like an idiot. Remember? And where were you? Where the hell were you at that time?" Frank was silent. He rarely intervened. His style was to watch from the corner while everyone else burned, and only then come with a hose that had no water in it. Lena lowered her eyes. She looked bad, like someone who had slept in a basement with cockroaches in fear. "I wasn't on the bus," she said. "I changed my mind at the last minute." "What about calling? Telling us, your parents, that you changed your mind? Or did you think it would be romantic to see your mother put your doll on the coffin?" "I was afraid. If I had gone back, he would have found me." There was a heavy pause in the room. "Who?" Agatha asked, and at that moment she felt something inside her grow cold for the first time. Not out of anger. Out of fear. Lena swallowed. "My boyfriend. Well, he seemed like a prince to me then. And then he turned into a monster. And then everything changed." Something clicked in Agatha. This was no longer just a family drama. It was a case, dirty, complicated, almost criminal. She sat down next to her. Her hands clenched. "Did he hit you?" "Yes. First when I didn't have time to make tea. Then when I answered back. Then just because. I tried to leave. He threatened me. I didn't know how. And you decided to disappear? Just like that." Lena looked away. "I set his trailer on fire. I thought he was inside. And then I ran away. I bought someone else's documents." "You killed a man?" Frank was surprised. That's something to note. First you came back to life, and now you're a criminal." Agatha gave her husband a look that would kill a dog. "Shut up, Frank. Shut up." Frank shrugged. "Fine. It's a woman's business, family ghosts. He's not getting involved." Lena slowly laid out some photographs in front of them. An old apartment. A cheap motel. A man's face. His name was Vic. He had a past, prison, drugs, beatings. I thought I could change him. Yes, I was a stupid girl. And then I became a prisoner. Agatha didn't know whether to cry or laugh. "What about Mom? Dad? Us? I watched you from afar. Several times. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. And then Mom died. Dad fell ill. I was afraid that everything would collapse. I wasn't ready. You buried us before our time, Lena. And now what? Surprise. I'm alive, save me from my ex-maniac." Lena nodded silently. "I'm afraid he'll find me again." He survived, Agatha. And then for the first time, Agatha didn't know what was scarier. The ghost of her sister sitting on her old sofa, or the ghost of the one she ran away from. End of chapter 2. This is the climax. Everything you've been waiting for is right here. Stay to see how the hero puts everyone in their place. Chapter 3. She ran away from him 20 years ago. But monsters don't die. They wait until you let your guard down. Now the past was standing at the doorstep, and it was hungry. The night was quiet and warm, but no one was sleeping in Agatha's house. Lena sat by the window, wrapped in a blanket like armor. Frank was snoring in the living room because Agatha had kicked him out. She said there should be a men's waiting area, until her sister was done. He didn't even argue. Agatha drank tea as strong as her character and mentally ran through all the possible scenarios. If he's alive. Where is he? If she's right. Then he might show up. But what if not? What if she made it all up? Or worse, what if she's hiding something? "Are you sure he's alive?" she finally asked. "He wrote to me. Recently. He found me through an old social media account. He said, 'The time has come.' And what did you do?" Did you send a smiley face? Or did you like it? Lena shuddered. I didn't reply. Agatha paced around the room. Do you have any proof that he's a threat? Or did you just come back to us like a schoolgirl at Christmas dinner? And now you want us to play Save the Lost Soul? Lena faltered. He knows where I am. Agatha froze. She looked at her sister. Deeply. Has he been here before? Lena looked away. This afternoon. When you went after Frank. I heard him scratching at the back door. I didn't open it. But I know those sounds. He always scratched like that. He knew I would understand. Agatha grabbed the phone. We're calling the police. And what am I going to tell them? That a dead guy came back for me? I don't have any papers. No evidence. Just scars. And scars, dear, are also evidence. Just not the kind they want to see. Lena smiled. A tired, broken smile. You've always been able to talk as if you had the world by the throat. Because I do. Or at least I try to. She sat down next to her. She stared at Lena's hands for a long time. Listen, if you're lying, I'll know. Sooner or later. And don't be offended if the consequences are like in a bad movie. But if you're telling the truth, we won't give him a chance. At that moment something clicked outside. Agatha jumped up. Frank, oddly enough, also woke up. He can smell when real drama is about to unfold in the house. What's that? He asked, getting up from the sofa. Agatha had already gone to the door. Don't open it, Lena whispered. If it's him, he won't go away. He's waiting for me to come out. What if it's just teenagers with TikTok? Frank muttered, coming up behind her. The click repeated itself. Then a creak. Then silence. Chilling silence. Agatha opened the curtain slightly. There was a box on the porch. There was no name on it. Only letters cut out of a magazine. Did you think I would forget? Frank held up the flashlight. What's in there? Agatha opened it. Inside was an old doll. Torn. Missing an eye. The same one Lena had carried around as a child until it disappeared along with its owner. Lena burst into tears. Frank cursed. Agatha closed the box. It means one thing, she said. What? Lena whispered. We're not playing hide and seek anymore. Now we're hunters. End of chapter 3. You think you understand everything? Ha! Believe me, what happens next is not what you expected. Don't miss it. Chapter 4. If you spend your whole life hiding from a monster, one day the monster will come to remind you who you really are. And sometimes it turns out that you yourself are not so innocent after all. The next morning, Agatha woke up to her alarm clock as always at 6:01 a.m. Because 6 a.m. is too obvious, and 6:05 a.m. is already lost time. She didn't like change. Especially the kind where resurrected relatives spend the night in her living room and former criminals leave gifts on her porch. Today we're going to the police, she said, placing a cup of coffee in front of Lena. And what am I supposed to say? Lena looked like someone who had run out of not only cigarettes but also hope. Hello, I was presumed dead. But in fact I just ran away after the arson, and now that guy is back? That's not a statement, it's a Netflix plot. But it's exciting, Frank muttered, chewing on toast. Haven't they offered you a TV series yet? Agatha narrowed her eyes. He's joking, Lena interjected. In his own way. When I was a child, my mother used to say that his sense of humor was like a screwdriver. It pricks, but it doesn't help. God rest her soul, Frank muttered. Agatha stood up. We need a plan. If the police won't take it on, we'll find a way. I'm not going to wait until he burns down our house or starts writing on the walls with blood. I have new curtains, by the way. Frank sat down at his laptop. I did a little Googling. Victor Langston. 3 convictions. The last one was for aggravated assault. He was released early 5 years ago. Since then, nothing. But he clicked the mouse and expanded the screen. Here. A man with a similar appearance worked in a warehouse 2 hours from here. He disappeared a month ago. Cameras caught him leaving in a black jacket and never returning. No one reported him missing. Lena turned pale. It's him. He had a jacket like that. I remember those eyes. So he's already nearby, Agatha said. The question is, what does he want? Me, Lena whispered. Or something else, Frank interjected. You didn't just disappear. You set his trailer on fire. Are you sure there wasn't anything valuable in there? Lena paused. There was a safe, but I didn't open it. I was scared. What if he thinks you opened it? Agatha raised her eyebrows. Then he's not here for nostalgia. Frank clicked on the keyboard again. I found a news article. A fire. Dated the day you disappeared. No victims were found, so they thought you were on the bus. Agatha folded her arms across her chest. Now that's interesting. So he thinks you stole something important from him. And you're convinced you were just saving yourself. One of you is definitely lying. I'm not lying, Lena said sharply. It doesn't matter. What matters is that he's back. And we have to stay one step ahead of him. Frank sighed. I'll be honest. We don't stand a chance in a fair fight. If he's crazy, we have to act crazy too. Agatha nodded. So we'll lure him out. Lena turned pale. Are you crazy? Exactly. Otherwise, we'll all be swept away like another trailer in a storm. And I'm not ready for my house to end up in the crime reports with the headline 3 idiots went after a dead man. And how are you going to lure him out? Lena asked. Agatha smiled. Through social media. You're dead. But suddenly, you're alive again. You post something. About yourself. A photo. And a couple of hints. He won't be able to resist. Trust me. Maniacs don't like being forgotten. Lena looked at her sister as if she were seeing her for the first time. You've always been crazy. But now, you're damn right. Frank stood up. I'm going to go buy a camera and a couple of traps. I've watched Home Alone enough times, now it'll come in handy. Agatha opened her laptop. Let the game begin. End of chapter 4. She took the first step. But the real hunt is just beginning. Don't miss it. Chapter 5. They thought they were ready to face the past. But the past turned out to be different from how they remembered it. That night, illusions would disappear. And so would some people. Lena's photo, posted under a new name, got 8 views in the first 3 minutes. One of them was from him. Agatha knew it. How can you be sure? Lena asked, clutching her cup. Because 7 minutes later, an email arrived. No text. Just a photo you as a child on the beach. The one that was in my mother's box. Only, someone had drawn a noose on it. Frank looked at both of them. He's playing games. Agatha nodded. So it's time for us to play too. Frank set up the cameras. One in the entrance. One at the back door. The third directly opposite the kitchen window because, as he said, if there's going to be any drama, it'll be at the fridge. That was his sense of humor. Lena tried to smile. It turned out worse than a cat having convulsions. Agatha sat with a notebook. She always did that when the situation got out of control. She started writing. So he came back because he thinks Lena stole something. Or, she looked at her sister. He just couldn't forget. You mean it's personal? With people like that, it's always personal. Maniacs don't take revenge on strangers. Only on those they once loved. Stop it, said Lena. He didn't love her. He possessed her. It's not the same thing. Frank turned on the monitor. There's movement. The camera on the porch. Someone's coming. Everyone held their breath. A silhouette appeared on the screen. Tall. A hat. His back was straight like a doll in a shop window. He wasn't walking, he was floating. He knew exactly where he was going. Frank grabbed a bat. Agatha grabbed her phone. Lena just stood up. "I'm going out," she said. "Are you crazy?" They both exclaimed. "No. I'm tired of being afraid." She opened the door. He was standing 5 meters away. It was him. Vic. Only older. Dirtier. And with eyes like empty dolls. "You're back," he said. "I never came back. I just stopped running." "Where is it?" "What?" "The safe." Agatha followed her out. "You didn't get my sister then. And you won't get her now." He laughed. Dryly. "Who are you, witch?" "The one who won't give you a chance." Frank was the last to leave. "Everything is being recorded, buddy. So if you want to confess, now is the best time." Vic didn't respond. "I was looking for her. Because I need to get back what's mine." "Nothing here is yours," Lena said. Then, he took a gun out of his pocket. It was small, but it had enough bullets. "I'll take something else." Agatha didn't lose her composure. She pulled a stun gun from behind her back. A surprise from the toolbox. Vic staggered but managed to fire. The bullet hit the wall. Lena fell. Not from the wound, from shock. Frank pounced on him like a pit bull. Agatha shouted something about the police. The cameras recorded every moment. When the cops arrived, Vic was already lying there, bound with duct tape, and on his forehead was a note. He came for death. He got shame. Lena was taken away in an ambulance. Agatha sat down on the steps. "Well, Agatha?" Frank asked, sitting down next to her. "The end." "No," she said. "This is just the beginning. We buried one lie. Now we have to dig up the rest." Frank sighed. "I was hoping that after 50 life would become calmer." Agatha smiled. "You're confusing that with a funeral." End of chapter 5. But if you think it's over, wait. Because the finale won't be about Vic. It will be about what Lena still hasn't told us. Chapter 6. He's been arrested. The threat is gone. But why does it still hurt? Sometimes the scariest thing isn't the one who comes back, but what you've been hiding even from yourself. A week had passed. Lena was lying in her hospital room, her arm hooked up to and for, her eyes fixed on the ceiling. Agatha sat by the window, leafing through an old family album. Frank brought her a sandwich which she ignored, as she had all the previous ones. "Is she eating?" he whispered. "She's just silent," Agatha replied. Lena lay in a white gown like a soaked conscience. "You're safe," Agatha said. "Vic is under arrest. He has 3 other cases pending. They won't let him go." Lena nodded. Then she slowly turned around. "Agatha, can I tell you something? Just don't interrupt me." Agatha sat closer. "I didn't leave just because he was a monster. I left because I was pregnant at the time, with his child, and I didn't want that child to know who his father was." Silence. So thick that even her heart skipped a beat. "I gave birth. In a small clinic in Iowa. I left the baby in an orphanage. Under a false name. I thought it was the right thing to do. Better. But now, I don't know." Agatha looked at her sister as if she were a woman who had just been taken out of a Stephen King novel and thrown into real life. A mixture of pity, anger, and something resembling understanding, but in an uncomfortable form. "Do you want to find him?" she finally asked. Lena shook her head. "I want him not to look for me. I want him to live his life and never find out who I am. Because if he ever finds out, he'll be another person I have to explain to why I ran away. And I'm tired of explaining." Agatha squeezed her hand. "I won't tell you that you did the right thing. But I will say this. You are not alone now. If he ever shows up, we'll tell him that you were young, broken, and did what you could." Lena began to cry. But this time it was quiet. Not like a victim, but like a person who had finally allowed herself to be alive. "Did your mother know?" Agatha asked suddenly. Lena nodded. "I called her once. I didn't say who I was, but she recognized my voice. She cried. Then she said only one thing. Take care of yourself, Lena. We all do stupid things to survive. Agatha stood up. Then here's what we'll do. We'll go home. You'll stay with us. Not as a guest. As a sister. Frank always complains that it's too quiet here. Let's see what he says when you eat his chips. Lena laughed through her tears. Do you really still eat his chips? No, I hide them. But he doesn't know. Frank walked in as if on cue. Well? Peace, friendship, gum. You can chew the chips if you leave at least one bag, Lena said. He winked. Welcome home. Just a warning. Everything is the same here. Agatha is in charge, I agree with her. If that suits you, stay. Lena looked at her sister. Then she looked out the window. And for the first time in 20 years she simply nodded. Final. Sometimes home isn't a place. It's the people who have endured the worst and the scariest things with you. And didn't run away.